Well, happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show for the Intrepid radio program. That's my show, and I'm Scotty Roberts, your host. How about that? And so welcome. I got everything, I think, all set up ahead of time this time. If you can hear me, then that's a good thing. That means I don't have it on mute anywhere secretly. So welcome, everybody that's here. Leslie Holker, good to see you. Field guy, Steve Clark, Foxy Roxy Gerard, good to see you. And also field guy, Dave Diaz. Good to see you, David. And we've got, who else is in here tonight so far? I think I said field guy. Steve Clark, Helene Moody, good to see you. Sean R. Vest Sr., good to see you, brother. Governor. And Susie Q is here. Good to see you as well. And we now have about a minute and a little over a minute and a half. We go live over on the radio station. And so that's coming up. This is our show tonight, Spirits and Standing Stones in the Garden of Spirits and Standing Stones. But I'm going to pull that off of there for now because in a moment we're going to go dark. And then we're going to go live at 3 minutes after the top of the hour. We go live over at OdysseyRadio.com. And Odyssey is spelled, as you know, oddly, ODYSY, radio.com. And we are, of course, Subspace Odyssey Radio. So it's good to have you all here tonight. If I missed anybody, it's not because I missed you. It's because I missed you. It wasn't deliberate. It was an act of omission. Michael's here. Sean Holt is here. Good to see you, Sean. Glad you made it. And what do we got? We got about 40 seconds, and we go live over on the radio station. Look at me. I'm tired tonight. What's with that? I've been tired for 2 days. Not sleeping well or something. So, I feel like I could go to bed right now and I'd wake up tomorrow morning. So, well, we got about 13 seconds left and we go live on the radio. So sit tight. We'll be right back. Going dark.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the program. I am Scotty Roberts, and this is my show, the Intrepid radio program right here on Subspace Odyssey Radio. And if you want to hear this show in its audio format only, just go on over, because it's radio, just go over to OdysseyRadio.com. That's ODYSY radio.com. And you can hear this show in its audio format. You can also check out the archives over there. These archives go all the way back. So I've been with Odyssey Radio in one form or another as it's changed hands, come back, changed hands, so on. Has it been 5 years now in August, or was it 4 years in August? Can't remember. So Russ Haslage has been there the most of the time. And so it's good to be back over there. And also, you can catch this show if you're listening on radio and you want to join the chat room. Come on over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join there. You can become a member there, part of the YouTube Intrepid family. You can also go over to my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Scotty Roberts. And the show is also broadcasting there tonight. The only problem with Patreon right now, it doesn't have as good a chat room as YouTube. So go over to YouTube. You'll get the best chat room that exists over there. And first thing I want to start off with tonight, I got no announcements. I got no major. There's all kinds of major news we could talk about. But hey, Leslie. Leslie said, Scotty, I am too. I'm not sleeping well. The weather is sucking the life out of me. I don't know. I am just, weather's not doing too much to me. I'm just not sleeping well for some reason. I go to bed. I wake up at what? 2 in the morning, 2:30, and playing the insomniac. And then I try to get back to sleep, and it's sometimes 5 is the last I look at the clock, and I realize I fall asleep sometime between 5 and 7 a.m. And then I'm just beat because I got to get up and do stuff. And the rain won't stop, says Randall Flack. Yeah, there's that. We did have thunderstorms here today, which was kind of nice. We could have used them all through the summer. We didn't have a thunderstorm, I think, since before midway in summer. And we were having remember when we were having all our basement leakage I told you about? We got flooding in the basement. Well, we finally got that fixed, and then it didn't rain again the rest of the summer. So other than a couple of light sprinkles. So last night was the biggest rain we got, or this morning, I think. Thunderstorms. I was so unused to hearing thunderstorms. I was sitting down here. I was on Kenny's podcast, Morning Coffee with KB, and it sounded like somebody was upstairs banging around. I thought, everybody's at school and Rainy's off. And so I went upstairs, and it was thunder. So that's how unaccustomed to thunder I got. Hey, I've got sitting here in my hands my Spark Courage. Boom. Remember these? We do these every so often. This is that little faux matchbox of 50 ways to be bold. Little, you can see in there, fake matches. And each one of those has a little saying on it. And something that is supposed to help us spark our courage and to be bold. And, we've talked, we were talking a couple weeks ago about the Constitution and about how the states created the federal government. So the federal government is subservient to the states. States can tell the federal government what to do. And we have given it its power, we the people. And so we were talking about that and talking about movements that mean anything have always started with the power of one person. Somebody who steps out and says something and does something. And it starts people following. If you look at what's going on right now in our government, you look at what's going on in this country, look at what's going on in the world, look at the weakness that we put forward in the world. Look at Ukraine, look at Russia, look at China, look at all of this. We used to have, when I was in seminary, way back 40 years ago plus, we used to talk about, well, we see all these things in Bible prophecy about the end times. Where's the United States? We couldn't identify the United States anywhere in all of that. So was the United States gone when end times hit? Are we already done? Who knows? If you believe that that is what's actually going to happen. Now, I've drawn out one of these matchsticks, but this is a way to be bold, to step out, to put your face forward. Be bold, be confident. I tell my sons and my daughters, all of them, be bold and confident. Don't let anybody, my son is Flynn. My 14-year-old is probably the more bashful of all my kids, of all 6 of my children. He's the most bashful, the most quiet. I shouldn't put it that way because he's very loud with his friends. But I said, Flynn, you need to, and I used to tell him when he was young, I said, put your chest out, put your chin up, hold your head high. If somebody talks to you, you uphold your own, you stand for what you believe in. I've always told my kids to stand for what they believe in and don't let anybody tell them what to believe or what not to believe. That's all about maybe even being the leader of a movement, of doing something that means something, that's meaningful. That's why we do these 50 ways to be bold. These spark courage. This is a way to do that. Here is tonight's. I haven't read it. My light is low here. If I hold it right, I can read it in the camera. Let's see. What does that say? Share your opinion when you're inclined to stay quiet. Does that fit into what I was just saying or what? Share your opinion when you are inclined to stay quiet. Say something. Do something. Be something. I was just talking with a good friend of mine the other day, Carr Hagerman, about what did Edmund Burke say? It's become cliche almost now, but that famous quote of Edmund Burke's, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So if evil is triumphing and you're doing nothing about it and saying nothing about it and not standing against it, not sharing your opinion when you're inclined to stay quiet, look at what's happened for the last, at least since Trump got in office, all the political bullshit that's gone on, how many people wouldn't open their mouths for fear that they would be doxxed. And it wasn't Trump doing that. It was those resisting Trump, those resisting anybody that supported him. You couldn't say anything, and people didn't say anything for fear that they would be included in the doxing, the cancel culture, and all of that. And I think people are starting to get over that. They're starting to realize that that's what they've done. So they're starting to speak up more. They're starting to say what they believe. And I want to see that, and I hope it keeps happening. If you believe something, speak up. If you have an opinion, state your opinion when you're inclined to stay quiet. It's because sometimes it takes one person's opinion to change the world, and that sounds so idealistic. Let's localize that. Sometimes it takes one person's opinion to change some wrong that's going on, or to pursue some right that needs to be pursued. State your opinion. Foxy Roxy says authenticity is lacking in this world. Always speak your truth. Damned Skippy, Roxy. Foxy, you go by Foxy or do you go by Roxy? Or do you go by Gerard? So I don't know which one will slip out whenever I refer to you, Foxy or Roxy first. Field Guy says, I'm changing the real right now by typing. I'm changing the real right now by typing. You lost me. But Leslie says, I just support, says Leslie. Yeah, you do what you got to do. So, one of my very wise friends, says Helene Moody, said, politics is show business for ugly people, R.E. politicians, and they are sure showing us their ugliness from the inside out. That's very true. And I'm over it. I'm so over. I so want to see change. And I hope that change takes place. Because I got to tell you, the current train this country is on is getting us to nowhere fast. And I asked Kenny this question this morning, and then I'll get off of this stuff. It's like I watched part of it's not impeachment hearings. They're not trying to impeach Joe Biden right now. What's going on is impeachment inquiry. They're looking at evidence to say there's enough evidence here that has a whole lot of people asking, why aren't we impeaching him? And let's have an inquiry. And this is going to take a while because they're doing it the right way. You hold an inquiry first, which is what they're doing. This is not an impeachment process that we're in right now. It's the process that might lead to an impeachment, depending on if all the dots connect and there's evidence to support them, which is beginning to look that way. But the thing that flummoxes me is how many senators I watched, representatives I watched on these committees that are doing everything they can to defend Joe Biden. And many times they're trying to defend him by once again rehashing why they impeached Donald Trump and what they think he did wrong. This isn't an inquiry hearing for Donald Trump. So, and I asked the question of Ken, I said, what is with people? Why can't people, is it just party affiliation and defense of this is my party and this is where I stand? I don't care which side you're on, but is it just defending your own people and that's what it's all about? Or is it saying my own people, I don't have my own people other than that I'm conservative. But if I believe that Donald Trump committed crimes, you damn well know I'd be saying, you know what? He needs to be taken down. So, but I don't see that coming from the left. And maybe it's because most of them know Biden hasn't done anything because it's not him running anything at all. But it sure seems to look like there's stuff going on. So ask yourselves these questions as you watch this stuff, as you watch politics unfold, as you watch the war in Ukraine keep going. It's the Russians and the Chinese who are all in a pact together. You know why? Because they know the United States has never been weaker in the modern era than it has grown to be over the last 3 years. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. The United States is no longer a major player on the world economic front and the world military front. We're no longer looked at that way. We are no longer the superpower anymore. Unoffendable says politicians have been compromised with things we can't talk about here that happened on an island. Shall I go on? Yeah, we've talked about some of those things, but there's some things you can't say here because you know what? The platform will level charges against me and they'll take me off air. They did it for a week once because one of my guests said something they didn't like, and it lasted less than 30 seconds. And it was a harmless statement, but YouTube didn't like it and they nailed me for it. And now every show I do, it's already partially demonetized once it's up because I have to go in and protest it every single show because they've got me set on a demonetization because they don't like what I have to say. And I don't get as bad as other people I know. I got to tell you that. I don't get too deep on this show, at least not into too many conspiracy theories. I like to get into what we're doing, how we think, how we believe, how we handle ourselves. So there you go. Professor Bauer said this, and then YouTube did this. Well, yeah, that was it. And you know, Professor Bauer, he didn't say anything wrong or bad. He just said something, and they didn't like what he said. And they claimed I was passing medical disinformation about COVID. I'm like, are you kidding me? I actually talked to somebody back and forth several times. They wouldn't remove the, and so I got one hit. I get two more. Guess what? All my content for the last however many years I've had my YouTube, I've got over 1,200 shows, I think it is, in archive on YouTube. All gone. They'll all be disappeared. They're just gone. So anyway, enough on that. I didn't want to get into that topic. It is now 19 minutes after the top of the hour. I want to get into tonight's topic, but I wanted to start by saying, with the spark courage, and that just played into everything. If you have an opinion, don't stay quiet when you have the opportunity to speak up. Show your boldness. Be bold. Be brave. There you go. That's all I'll say about that. And be a stone. Be a standing stone. Oh, segue right into our topic. Let me ask you guys, do you know what the purpose of a standing stone was? If you're over there in the chat room, and just give me some answers. What do you think the purpose of standing stones is? Down through the ages, what was the purpose of them? Anybody want to wager? I guess we got a little bit of a time delay here, so I'll let it catch up a little bit. If you guys want to answer that, throw some answers. Why do you think standing stones exist? Why do you think we have ancient standing stones? What's the purpose of standing stones? By standing stones, I'm talking sundial, says Susie. So you could find graves easier, says Leslie, posits Leslie. And I'm talking places like Stonehenge, things like that. Those markers, says Morgan Snow. And I think it's a little bit of all of those. A calendar, says Susie Q. I think it's like this. I'll save that for a little bit, what I was going to say right there. I'll save it toward the end. But standing stones were markers for one thing or another. Many times they were markers for spirituality, to remind people of why things were done a certain way. Many times they were for calendars, like Susie puts forward, to keep track of the cosmos, to keep track of when the sun is coming up and what the equinoxes are and so on. We've got all these different reasons as to why standing stones. And the one reason I have is the significance of man-made standing stones is largely debated as they date all the way back to the Stone Age, though it's widely believed that they were placed in order to memorialize a notable event or celebration, or to signify religious beliefs. That's what most people think that standing stones and the purpose of them was. And I've got a couple of things here that I want to talk with you about. Which is the one that I want to see first? Okay, here's one. Oh, I'm hearing thunder right now, by the way. Leslie, that might affect you, except our weather kind of comes from your direction. So, have you heard of, we've all heard the name Ebenezer. Heard it most famously, Ebenezer Scrooge, from The Christmas Carol by Dickens. We see Ebenezer facilities, a lot of, in Minneapolis, we had the Ebenezer nursing homes and things like that. And there's an old hymn in church that one of the verses, the second verse, says something about, now I raise my Ebenezer. And I go, what is that? What's the Ebenezer? And there are, throughout the Bible, let's use this for an example. Throughout the Bible, stones have always had great significance. Now, do you remember many times God told the judges, he told the kings, he told people to tear down the high places, the places of pagan worship and so on. And many times those places of pagan worship were marked by standing stones. But then, of course, and some of those still exist. But then, of course, you have the prophets and God telling the Israelites to erect stones as memorialize things. So in Genesis, you had a stone that signified name places. You had a stone of rest, the pillow of comfort in Genesis. A stone covered well in Genesis. A Mizpah stone of blessing and God's faithful watch in Genesis. A stone of precious promise, Jesus, the rock. That's a more metaphorical stone. A stone of foundation and victory, banner of Jesus. A stone of deliverance and memorial. And so you had all these reasons that stones were put up. But look at Psalm 46:1. It says, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in times of trouble. And the Ebenezer is what I want to refer to here. This stone is a stone of help. In 1 Samuel, the book of 1 Samuel, we find a stone that reminds us that God promised to be our help in all things. If you apply it broadly, it was for Israel in the context of the story. And it serves as an assurance that God's help was always going to be present, proven, ready, and reliable for Israel. In Kirjath Jearim, 10 miles west of Jerusalem, the prophet Samuel, now this is before the time of David. This is at the time of King Saul, the first king of Israel. Samuel instructed the people to turn from false gods and to return to the God of Israel. And Samuel also promised the people that God would deliver them from the hands of the Philistines, their big enemies. And the people did as Samuel instructed, and Samuel then called upon the Lord for his help. And when the lords of the Philistines came against the Israelites, the people feared, and they said to Samuel, cease not, Samuel, to cry to God for us. The Lord our God, they said, for us, that he will save us out of the hand of the Philistines. And Samuel then made an offering unto God, and it says, and the Lord heard him. It's all in the book of 1 Samuel. And the people had shown their faith in the promise of God, and they sought Samuel, God's anointed, to intercede for them. And God in his goodness and his faithfulness responded with the deliverance of his people from harm. And it says in 1 Samuel 7:10 through 11, and as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel, but the Lord thundered with a great thunder on that day upon the Philistines and discomfited them, whatever that is, and they were smitten before Israel. And the men of Israel went out to Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and smote them. So once again, God protected his people. According to this story, the victory was the Lord's and the people were preserved. The help that the Lord had given them was memorialized when Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, hitherto hath the Lord helped us. Sorry for the old English. That's what's in, well, what I've got here. And Ebenezer literally means stone of help. And the Lord is our Ebenezer stone, is what this story set forth. He's the ever-present help in times of trouble. And remember his promises, and so on. And so take the Ebenezer stone of help and add it to the stone memorial. That's what that is. And now I read a little account of a woman who said she, around her studio, and I didn't save it. I wish I had. It was kind of sweet the way she wrote about it. She said, I have certain things that happen in my life that if you look around my studio, you'll see little rocks and stones on shelves. I've got jars, some of them that have stones in them. And I've written in marker on them something that I feel God has done for me or the universe has done for me and so on. So I have these stones as remembrances of things. And so all around her studio and her home, she's got these little, I don't think it's over flooded with these stones, but she said, you'll find them on the shelves and different places around my home, because she will take, and as a reminder to herself for what either God has done for her, or the universe has done for her, or some good thing, she has taken and written on those stones these things that were done, these things that happened. So she would always have them as reminders. I've got a little jar up here. It's up here somewhere, I think, on that shelf. I don't see it from here. I don't know where I've got it. I don't know where I put it. It's a little jar. It's full of rocks. It's a little tiny jar, and it's got a wooden lid that presses into it. And it's Abby and Bryn's rocks from when they were about a year old, a little over a year, just walking. We were all up at Lake Superior on the North Shore, and they picked up those rocks. Now, there was no great esoteric meaning to something there that we were memorializing, but what I memorialized, and I put a little label, I hand drew a label, and I glued it onto the front of this jar that said Abby and Bryn's rocks. And it has the date that they picked them all up on Lake Superior. And I wish I had that sitting here. I thought it was right there, and now I don't see it unless it's hidden back. You see my shelves back there. Look at all that stuff that's up there. It's back in there somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. I'd have to get up and go look for it. But that was a memorial for them, a memorial for me. And you memorialize things. I've got one memorial that I set up. Now, let me show you this before we get into the meat of what the last 20 minutes of the show, 25 minutes of the show will be about. But I want to show you a picture here. You may have seen this before. I'm going to take down the header for a minute there so you can see this better. This picture right here. You see that stack of stones? That is a memorial marker that I left in the middle of the Sinai Desert, up on the top of a mountain, Serabit el Khadim, in the Sinai. And it's still there, I'm sure. I put that up there in what year? 2014. And I would guarantee you it's still there. Because we had seen other stone markers like this in the desert that had been there thousands of years. And so I set this up. It was at the edge of a cliff. You can see off the left there. And I reached over and I put this this stone, and it marked my family at the time. The stone on the bottom is me. The next one up is Rainey. And then there is Abby and Bryn and Sam and Flynn. And I think Rowan is in here. If you look, one of them's partially hidden, 3 from the top. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stones there. And so there'd be 2 more. There'd be 1 more, just Ellery. And so that was my family, my children, my wife, and me, memorialized in the Sinai Desert, the Sinai Wilderness, on a mountain that we thought would be very possibly, and I wrote about it, Serabit el Khadim, the mountain, the actual mountain of God from the book of Exodus, the Mount Sinai. And I'm beginning to think more and more it might not have been the holy mountain, but a mountain they stopped at on the way. And there's lots of signs there, telltale signs. But there it is. So that's a memorial that I put up for my family. And it's more than likely there's nobody that's going to come along and kick that monument over, because nobody is there ever. So that is the monument to my family that I left in the Sinai Desert. And so that's what these stone markers would do. Chuck Thurston. Hey, Chuck. Haven't seen you for a while. Good to have you here. He says, I've made and left many rock stacks along the Truckee River in Nevada. Markers to those that follow. There it is. And Foxy Rocky says, Professor Bauer always challenges the norm. Some of us are meant to rock the boat. That's what he does. And he does it very well. And yeah, very cool place to put it, Leslie. I don't know that I'll ever see it again in this life. I'm sure I'll get over there again at some point. But that's in the middle of the Sinai Desert. You cross through the Suez Canal, underneath the Suez Canal, to the east side of the north tip of the Red Sea, and you travel down the east of the Red Sea, about halfway point, not to the big expanse of the Red Sea, but one of the fingers that comes up. You got the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba. And so you go about halfway down and then go inland about 40 miles, and you hit Sheikh Barakat's camp where we stayed. And this little mountain is under his sheikhdom over there. So it was very cool. A remote view or astral project. Sarah, you're hitting on something that I would love to try. It actually makes me a little nervous, but I'd love to try it. I'd love to learn about that and give that a shot and see what I can see. But there it is. And if you just stepped into the room, it was this picture. That is the little stone memorial I left for my family atop Serabit el Khadim in the Sinai Desert. So let's go into standing stones a little bit. My initial brush with this today was to give us something to talk about ancient standing stones. Is there a spiritual side to standing stones? And I thought, we always did Fridays as ghost days. What connection could I make, I thought. And so I wanted to look at this, and I've got 14 mind-bending facts about ancient standing stones that I want to go through. But before I do, I found this article by this young woman. And I say young woman because she's a lot younger than me. A guide to standing stones in Scotland. And I wanted to show you some of the things that she talked about here. And just for fun, I wanted to talk about her she wrote in her blog, it's an old blog, well, not too old. It was June of this year. And she talks about a guide to standing stones or time travel, she says, in Scotland. And of course, if you haven't seen it or have seen it, she's making reference to Outlander, the books, and the TV series that still is spectacular. I think they're in their 7th or 8th season now. I think it's the 7th season coming. And it's based on the books. And it's very, very well done if you haven't seen it. Incredibly historically well done. Worth watching. But of course, it's about a woman, Claire, who in the 1920s comes to these standing stones. What is it? Craig on Dune or something like that was the name of the hilltop. And she touches the stone and it passes her back in time 200 years, which was the basis for the novels. And that all by itself is a science fiction novel. But then the rest of the stories are all just her living life in the past and coming back at some points and going back again, finding out she can go a little bit back and forth. So very interesting stories. And this author, Braun is her name. That's all that's there. She says there's something about an army of stone standing in a field, like men who went to fight a battle and were frozen in time, like children running in a field playing stuck in the mud, stuck forever. Surrounded by the wild Scottish landscape, there's something mystical about standing stones. Gazing up at them, you wonder if they were ever once more than a stone. And in a way, they are, and always have been more than just stone. Today, people flock to see these incredible monuments to a civilization long gone. From Stonehenge in England to Callanish standing stones in Orkney, these monuments were erected for a reason. And part of the mystery lies in the unanswered questions surrounding the stones. Who exactly put them there? And how? And what was their use? We can speculate, and that's about half the fun. But what cannot be denied is that standing stones have meant a great deal to humanity for thousands of years. And so she goes on and she says, when I moved to Scotland 18 months ago, I was eager to experience the magic of these stones. Let me clear the air right off the bat, she says. Craig na Dun from the addictive TV show and the book series Outlander does not exist. She said, trust me, I tried to track it down. I followed the directions from several bloggers' articles, driving out to a place called Kinloch Rannoch to find it. I knew it didn't exist. Not really. The hill is real, where they filmed it, but the stones were staged there for the show. A shame, to be sure. But did I still run around the top of the hill, touching trees and closing my eyes in the hopes that I'd be transported back in time regardless? You bet I did. Those are the things we do sometimes. Even when we're adults, we do weird stuff. And we get ourselves involved in doing the things that make us feel happy. That's what she did. And she said, just like in the show, there was a moment when the wind picked up and I stood very still, arms splayed to the side, just hoping, but I'm still here. She goes, big shock, right? But the good news is that there are plenty more standing stones scattered all over Scotland, just wanting to transport any unsuspecting traveler back in time, if not in reality or real-time time travel, at least metaphorically, as you think of the past. And if you don't believe in time travel and all that good stuff, fear not. There are other theories behind the magic and the meanings of all these standing stones. Mystery. The true purpose of the stones is, for the most part, a mystery. It's modern day archaeologists and travelers alike theorize the why of them. Of the most common and logical theories is that the sites were used for religious or ceremonial purposes. And perhaps it was where the locals gathered to have some big parties. Hey, you bring the clams, we'll bring the lambs, everybody brings mead, and we'll party. We'll party like it's 2099 BCE. So no matter their purpose, they're definitely worth a visit on any trip you might take to Scotland. And I've got 4 sites I want to go through before I get into my big list. I pull all this stuff together, and I think I don't have enough information to last a whole hour for a show. And many times, you know me, you know the way I do things. We'll get to them or we won't get to them. Either way, hopefully everybody will enjoy everything. Chuck Thurston said, I touched a stone stack once and I didn't transport anywhere, but it had an odd vibration. It's rock. It shouldn't vibrate. We were at places in Egypt where we had Chris Conway would touch stones and he would catch vibration off of those. It's interesting stuff, guys. I've had more than my share of weird experiences over there. But let's look first at the Callanish standing stones. And I've got some pictures here that will add to these. I have to pull off the banner again, just so you can, whoops, I don't know what that was. Just so you can actually see, oh, that was a different overlay. Here's the Callanish standing stones. This will remind you an awful lot of Stonehenge. This is Callanish. And I'm going to go through 4 sites in Scotland. That's going to give you some idea. They might not be the real Craig na Dun, but Callanish is supposed to be the inspiration for them. These stones are older than Stonehenge itself, but unlike this famous megalithic site, Callanish stones are accessible to the public. It's so far up in the Orkneys, there's nothing around it. You can just walk right up to them. It's not a big touristy site. It's a great place to go, and a lot of people visit and take pictures, but it's in the Orkney Islands, folks. So if you want to lay your hands on them, you can try your luck. You can get close to them. Back in the 1600s, the locals were convinced that these stones were the remains of men who had transgressed and were punished by being turned to stone. And if that's something you're inclined to believe, does that make Callanish the world's most stunning prison? Takes the punishment to a whole new level. You can go look up the Callanish stones, Callanish, I think is the way it's spelled, off the top of my head. Another site in Scotland is the Ring of Brodgar. That's these stones. Looks awfully similar. It's a big ring of stones, bigger than Stonehenge in scope. And the Brodgar stones. This is it's a group of giants dancing in a wide open field. I know in some novels, I think it was Morgan Llewellyn who wrote, was it Llewellyn who wrote The Mists of Avalon? I mix up the names sometimes. It was Morgan Llewellyn wrote The Mists of Avalon. Yeah, it wasn't Mary Stuart. And so they called them the Giants' Dance, these rings of stone. So it's a group of giants dancing in a wide open field. Their fiddler playing a haunting tune as his friends twist and turn. Why they're dancing, we might never know. If they were ever real, we also might never know. But what we do know is they were so distracted by their fun, their ritual, their celebration, that they didn't notice the first rays of sunlight peeking up from the horizon. And struck by those rays, the giants turned to stone, so the legend goes. And forever frozen in place, to be admired by people for thousands of years to come, or so the legend goes. Back in 1846, Scottish geologist Hugh Miller, High, visited the Ring of Brodgar on the Orkney Isles and wrote that the stones look like an assemblage of ancient druids, mysteriously stern and invincibly silent and shaggy. I prefer imagining 36 petrified giants stuck in the field. Their last moments of joy immortalized for all eternity. But the Ring of Brodgar, its name alone whispers of ancient rituals. Like many of its counterparts, the Ring of Brodgar has never been excavated, so its real age remains a mystery. Best guess is that the main ring was constructed between 2600 and 2400 BCE. Wouldn't it be fun to take a tour there? We should put a tour together and go to Scotland. I know we want to go to Egypt. We should do Scotland and do some trips like this as part of this show. They're part of the heart of the Neolithic Orkney World Heritage Site. It's a collection of important monuments built 5,000 years ago across the Orkney Islands, not to mention that they're the third largest stone circle in British Isles. And back in the day, it's suspected to have been able to hold 3,000 people that gathered to celebrate whatever they were gathering there to celebrate. So, yeah, I'd go, Sarah. I think we should do it. We should put something like this together. The third one I have of these four is the Macri Moor. The Macri Moor. Whenever I hear the word moor, I think of one of the first times I heard that was, the old Wolfman's movie with Lon Chaney Jr. Beware the moors at night. And it brings to mind where she looks at his hand, the old gypsy. For even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is full and bright. Beware the moors. So the Macri Moor is another place, the third of these four. And the Macri Moor is on the Isle of Arran, which is a place I had once said if I ever could, I would retire when I was old enough to retire. Ain't going to happen for a while. I'd pull up stakes and I'd want to own a little farm with horses and sheep on the Isle of Arran. It's between Ireland and Scotland and the Dalriada Straits, and it's a Scottish isle. And I thought, what a great place to go to the pub every night and have a couple of horses out there and live on the Isle of Arran. But that's where the Macri Moor is. And it's probably a touch easier to get to, especially if you're staying in Glasgow, which it's really off the coast near Glasgow. And wander over to the Isle for a night. You could visit the Macri Moor. And it was spring when this particular blogger was there. And we arrived around 7 p.m. when the sun burnt low in the sky, a golden haze shimmering across the landscape, like we were in the desert and not in a boggy moor in Scotland. It's an easy walk from the car park out to the stones. It's incredible to think that these standing stones were erected over 10,000 years ago. Look at that picture if you're watching the video on YouTube or on Facebook. That is a picture of the Macri Moor on the Isle of Arran off the coast of Scotland, on the west of Scotland, 10,000 years ago. Those stones were erected. That's almost as old as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. And only a tiny part of the moor has been excavated, and earlier timber monuments underlie what we can see today. Who knows what's left to discover under the surface? It's got to be excavated. And I've got one more, the fourth one, the Clava Cairns. And this is an aerial shot of it, or a drone shot. It's a cairn, and you can walk down the little passageway there that's very narrow and go into the center. A cairn is where they buried people. They were like grave markers. And so this is the Clava cairn. And the Clava cairn was built to house the dead. There's just something about saying those words that sends a chill down the built to house the dead. And it's no different to a graveyard or a tomb is. And yet a Scottish cairn, surrounded by standing stones, tucked away in a small forest, breathes more ceremony and mystery and power than one might expect from a simple gravesite. But who was important enough to receive this as their resting place forever? 4,000 years the cairns have been sitting there. As far as can be told, this sacred Bronze Age site, Bronze Age, you're talking the time, Bronze Age, Moses, the Exodus. 4,000 years the cairns have been sitting there. And the sacred Bronze Age site was a vital hub for millennia and longer, considering how people continue to flock here. Clava cairns are also another suspected inspiration for the famous Outlander series. So no one's going to blame you for losing yourself in a moment at any one of these places. Perhaps those who built them intended for them to be as captivating as we find them. And the stories that have attached to standing stones over time are like weather on the stone itself, and each story marks them in some way. Each person who visits imparts some idea, some fantasy, some hope. And each time someone tells their stories or captures a photo or shows them off to visitors, and we continue the legacy of these enduring moments. It's what we do. It's why they're there, to be memorials to us. So that's the 4 in Scotland. Now I've got this big list, and it's pretty short. It's short, but it's a list of 14 things. When you think of stone circles, does your mind flash to the standing stones of Stonehenge? Everything about Stonehenge sends the mind to wander. Who built it? How on earth did they do it? We kind of know how they did it. The answers still elude explanation. However, evidence surrounding the dating, the engineering, the astronomy of the ancient standing stone sites are now allowing us to understand those sites even better. What do standing stones really tell us of our human origins? Got 14 points you may not have known about the mystery and the origin of ancient stone circles. 1, they were a global, unexplained trend. Global. Zooming out from Stonehenge reveals that standing stones are found all over the world. There's some in New York. There's some in northern Minnesota. Believe it or not. Ancient sites dated deep into human prehistory are located all around the world. And while sharing common themes, standing stones all have individual traits. Some are so small, you'd hardly recognize them. Others are so large, they had villages built within them, like Avebury in England. The village is built right into the standing stone circle. Huge circles. They generally date to Neolithic and prehistoric periods. The oldest stone circle discovered is an incredible 12,000 years old, 5,000 years older than the first signs of written language. The Bible makes mention of stone circles 39 times. So there's no explanation as to who built many of these surviving standing stone circles. What they provide is evidence that our ancestors had masonry skills to cut, move, and assemble in ways that are difficult to explain and replicate even today. 2, the oldest standing stones are ancient. Located in modern Turkey is the oldest stone circle site of them all, dating to at least 12,000 years old. Göbekli Tepe is the oldest recorded standing stone site. It's so old that it dates to the boundary of when humans were thought to be hunter-gatherers. And located on the Turkey-Syrian border, they're found where humans transitioned into farming and settled living. And the standing stones are carved into huge T-shaped pillars. I was going to bring pictures in of all these too, and I didn't take the time today to upload pictures. But how these people created such large T-shaped standing stones is a complete mystery with the kind of technology they had. To make things even more mysterious, the total area of the site equates to roughly 12 football fields. That's a big area. Göbekli Tepe. There's a whole series of these stone circles that are all over the region there, or that area right there. And the complexity and the sheer size of Göbekli Tepe only unravels more mystery about the purpose of standing stones. And the site is nearly 50 times larger than Stonehenge. And it's a complete archaeological mystery. And do you know that the animals that are depicted there, some of them we haven't even identified yet? Does that mean they were mythical creatures? Or were they real creatures that have passed into extinction? It's an interesting question. And I've only got a couple of minutes left here with the radio audience, but we are going to finish this list of 14 into the captain's cabin. So everybody sit tight, and we're going to keep going. We won't even take a break. We'll just say goodbye to the radio audience at the right time, and we'll keep going. So working with stone, number 3 is engineering beyond the Stone Age. Working with stone can easily be regarded as primitive. Remember the Flintstones? Remember, everything they did was stone. They'd take a camera and there was a little bird inside that would chisel out a picture of somebody and spit it out. That was their polar rock camera. However, the more we learn about it, the less accurate that idea becomes, that the stoneworking was primitive. The reasons why stone was so important to build with is still to be understood. But making matters more complex is the accuracy, the skill, the workmanship that the ancient humans used to place and position these formations. And Stonehenge, as an example, is a multi-ton arrangement of stones. The sheer size is hard to explain in itself. However, the stones needed to be transported from 160 miles away in Wales. See, why did they do that when there were other stones around? There had to be a mysterious, mythical, religious, spiritual significance to the quarry where they took them. Then they're arranged into millimeter perfection alignment and precision. And the level of human capabilities to build these stone circles show that prehistoric cultures could have been more advanced than we might previously have thought. So, guys, we got to get out of here for the radio audience. I'm just going to play the end of the show, the exit, and then we're going to come right back into this without doing other ads. So, everybody on the radio, live long and prosper. Come and join us over at YouTube.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Okay, guys, we're back. This is the captain's cabin, but I want to go on with this list of 14 places, and then we'll take a little break after that. These mind-bending facts, I guess it would be. Number 4 is that Stonehenge is not the largest standing stone site in the UK. While Stonehenge is the most famous, it's not the largest. And the Salisbury Plain is a chalk plateau in the southwestern part of central and southern England. And it covers 300 square miles, and it's home to other standing stone sites. Did you know that? And a lesser known and larger stone circle stands in nearby Avebury, which I mentioned. It's one of the largest stone circles found on Earth. The entire layout is so huge that it now has a road and several houses built inside of it. The little main town with shops and all of that is inside the stone circles. And I was there back, I think the last time I was in Avebury was 1990, September of 1990. So what's that, 33 years ago? Wow. And that whole, as you start to move on the Salisbury Plain from Stonehenge, and you go down, you see Silbury Hill, you see all these different places, you start to move southwest toward Cornwall, which is way out at the end of Great Britain, or of England. But you start to go through, and I was particularly at the time very immersed in the Arthurian legends. And you could feel that. To me, it was palpable. That was probably psychological, mixed with a little bit of what's going on. And maybe this is what happened here. And the more I got into that region, you could feel it. The feeling was, I was at Stonehenge. We sat there for a few hours waiting for the sun to set. There were people coming and going. We just sat on the little hillock there and took pictures and, got something to drink and eat and sat on the little hillside, talked and relaxed in the grass as the sun was getting lower in the sky because I wanted to get some photos of sunsets at Stonehenge, which I still have. Glorious sunset that night. And I could feel it. I said even then, I said, you can feel it. It's palpable here. But only a portion of the original stones of Avebury are still standing. And when completed, it would have been an incredible sight 5,200 years ago. I talk about Moses, Hatshepsut, Senenmut, that guy over my shoulder. All of that would have happened around 1500 BCE. You're talking 3,500 years ago. Avebury, Stonehenge, 5,200 years ago. Almost 2,000 years older than the Moses story. Puts it in perspective. Up in England, what is now England. And many of the remaining stones within the complex have acoustic properties. Curiously, they echoes, large claps, and high-pitched tones can be achieved by creating sound waves directed at the stones. And these strange acoustic properties have also been documented in many other sites across England and the world. Number 5, there was a Neolithic UK standing stones culture. So across the United Kingdom stands thousands of stone circle sites. They're evidence of an unidentified culture of early human habitation of the area. The standing stone site in far north of Scotland on the island of Callanish, which was one of the first ones we looked at, bears a resemblance to the Celtic cross. It's made up of a central stone circle with a diameter of around 130 feet, with avenues of stone stretching away from the circle. And so the entire monument measures 400 feet east to west and 100 feet north to south. And the purpose of the aspects of design, it's unexplained. There's like an instruction manual there that came with the standing stones. However, the Celts adopted the same symbol for their culture, the Celtic cross, which didn't arise for about another 3,000 years. There's other standing stones in the UK that include Arbor Low in Derbyshire, Rollright Stones in Oxfordshire, Long Meg and her daughters in Cumbria, Casterig in Cumbria, Stanton Drew in Somerset, Ring of Brodgar in Orkney, and Big Moor Stone Circle. Number 6, the ancient astronomy of standing stones. This captures a lot of people's attention. One property of standing stone sites is the astronomical measurements that are built into them. Recording the cosmos is probably best known at Stonehenge, and the alignments to the summer and the winter solstices, as well as the ability to predict eclipses, seems to be one of the most important purposes of that site at Stonehenge. And the accuracy and the precision of these alignments are perplexing. And by the way, as you know, Stonehenge, you've got the stone circle, but something they didn't discover right away is the highway. That when you're in the air, you can see it under the ground, in the grass. The acids in the rock and the things that were done there leave grass not growing the same over the top. There's a highway that stretches all the way down to the river, miles. And there's other stone circles in there. So from the oldest at Göbekli Tepe to those built on remote islands, stone circles were astronomical observatories. And some are so large and sophisticated, it's difficult to explain how advanced ancient astronomy really was. And so today you can still witness how these sites measure the heavens. For example, the summer solstice at Stonehenge sees thousands of visitors that gather each year to witness it firsthand. They still work Number 7, the standing stones in the Middle East. So closer to the earliest stone circle, Göbekli Tepe, are some stunning ancient sites. The Middle East is considered to be the birth of modern civilization, and it's the home to a vast number of impressive astronomical standing stones. As a matter of fact, when I was I wish I'd thought of this earlier. I would have pulled up the picture. We can still maybe see it tonight. But when we were out at Gebel El Silsila, John Ward and Maria Nilsson's site in Egypt, and we went out, and they've got 23 square miles. We went out in the northern desert with a bunch of archaeologists and guys that were, if you saw my Facebook a few weeks ago, I put a picture of Sabra, I want to say his name was Sabra, or Sabre, and with the big headdress on, and he was one of our porters and Egyptian man. But we went out there, and we were looking for a stone wall that John had found on Google Earth. And we're out there, and I'm way up on the top of one of these cliff faces that levels off on the top. And it's not like sheer cliff, it's rocky, and you could climb up to the top. And I'm up there, and I get to the end of that escarpment, and I look way out into the valley before me, the desert valley. And way out there, there's a standing stone standing in the middle of the desert. I've got a picture of that somewhere, and if I have time to look it up tonight, I'll look it up and show you, if I can find it. So I know the series of photos it's in. It's just whether or not I can find it and remember it. So Karahunj, Karahunj is a site in Armenia consisting of 223 individual stones, of which only 37 are still standing. And some of these weigh up to 10 tons, and around a third have circular holes drilled out of them. And it's thought that these holes were used in ancient times as astronomical tools, allowing for tracking and understanding of the movements of the heavens. Many of these stones have been found to align to solstices and equinoxes, as well as lunar extremes. When I was in Egypt and we were down in Aswan, when we went down there to see Abu Simbel, we stopped at a little museum in Aswan, and out in the front, they have, and I think it was Zai Hawass who brought these stones there. They have a standing stone circle that they found in the middle of, bumfuck Egypt, in the middle of nowhere out in the desert. And these standing stones, the tallest one is maybe 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Just tall and narrow. They're carved out, some of them. Some are rough. And they range down to, small, a foot high. And there's a bunch of them. I don't remember how many. And it covers about a 15-foot diameter circle. And they, of course, measured them all. They picked these all up for some reason and transported them to Aswan and reconstructed them there. And so you can go out and stand inside them. They aligned them the way they were supposed to be aligned, so on. But there was an interesting story when they were out with the Zai Hawass. Here's these standing stones have been standing for 8,000 years in the desert. They don't date back. They date pre-dynastic Egypt. I don't know if 8,000 is the number, but way early. They've been standing there all this time, untouched, unmolested, still standing. And one of the drivers accidentally backed his Jeep into one of them and knocked one of them over. Imagine how that guy felt. I've just driven over an 8,000-year-old monument. So maybe that's why they transported them. I don't know. So moving on. Number 8, the South American standing stones. In Brazil, there's this 100-foot wide Stonehenge of the Amazon, made up of 127 standing stones and laid out around a hilltop. And they create the appearance of a crown. And in the winter, there are prominent alignments to the solstice, sunrise, which is thought to be one of the main functions of the site. Sulustani, Peru, houses 6 stone circles, all in close proximity to each other. These all have alignments to be specific astronomical markers. Standard dating suggests that they were placed between 100 AD and 1600 AD by a pre-Incan culture known as the Kola. Number 9 on this list, ancient and modern standing stones found in India. India is home to hundreds of known sites dating from thousands of years ago, all the way up to modern times. Telangana, located in South India, is home to an enormous 7,000-year-old circle. Yet in the Deccan region, there is a known site that wasn't constructed until the 1800s. And this is evidence that a standing stone culture managed to survive into modern day. Number 10, standing stone sites in the USA. In Massachusetts, United States, the site of Burnt Hill is a mysterious and ancient circle. The site can't be placed to any known culture to have lived in North America. It could be one last remaining site of the ancient North American era of stone circle construction. I find that very interesting. That's Massachusetts. In New York, Cassidy O'Connor, a good friend of mine, into archaeology up in New York, and she's been to some sites up there that have, I don't think they're stone circles, but standing stones. Number 11, the standing stones of Japan. Between 2400 BCE and 1000 BCE, Japan was undergoing a prolific phase of stone circle construction. And there are 30 rings that have been found in the country's north, all dating to this prehistoric period. You're starting to see a pattern. Every country, every major civilization had stone circles. The Austrian standing stones, number 12, thought to be as old as 11,000 years. A standing stone site, 165 foot in diameter, has been found in Victoria, Australia. And it's made up of over 100 basalt boulders. And it has observational alignments to solstices and equinoxes. Australia, Aboriginals, dating back 11,000 years. 13, the magnetic properties of stone circles. A possible purpose of standing stone sites is the use of their magnetic properties. When stones form naturally, they have this magnetic signature that will always point in the same direction, similar to that of a compass. And these stones have magnetic alignments to specific points on the planet. For example, there are certain stone circles that might be aligned with the magnetic qualities of the stones. And in some cases, as the stones are laid out, they each point magnetically to the next stone in the circle. And it may have been a way of directing of electromagnetic energy thousands upon thousands of years ago. So research into the magnetic qualities of different stone circles could reveal that ancestors understood and manipulated these properties of the stone. Then finally, number 14, alignments and geographical arrangements. So similar to harnessing local electromagnetic energy, it's been suggested that larger patterns are present in standing stone sites. So all across England, it's suggested that stone circle sites follow straight paths that span across the countryside. Many circles, especially across southern England, may have been built in a straight line. If this is the case, these circles are separated by hundreds of miles. So some have suggested the links between the sites, which could have been a blueprint that the ancients understood and built by. I remember in my book, and it's some factoids I had heard and then looked them up, researched them a bit, and I wrote it in The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, which came out 2012, so 11 years ago. But in that book, I mentioned the different sites in the ancient world between Norway and Greece. And so sites in Norway, the Aegean, down into Egypt, down into Africa, across into Europe. All these different sites aligned with each other. You could draw a straight line from the oracle at Delphi, a straight line north, and you would hit one other site, and I can't remember what it was, but then it would also then intersect up in Norway with a site that was aligned to the same line. And you need three things because you could draw a straight line from one thing to anything. So it went through three things, and then a straight line. Wait, what was it? Maybe the oracle at Delphi was the middle one, and it goes down to somewhere in Egypt. I'd have to go look at my own book to refresh the fact in my head. Suffice it to say, I was making the point in the book that there are a lot of these ancient monuments that all align with each other. There are places that have very similar types of development. We have stone circles all over the world. There's a stone circle. We have pyramids all over the world. Were these cross-cultural exchanges? I don't know. So recent research is revealing that standing stones hold a key to our human origin story. There's a rich history of stone circle construction found all over the world. And what drove our ancestors to this form of temple and how did it spread across the entire planet is a big question that's still not left answered. And the secret, this is what archaeology is all about. The secrets held by these immense structures, stone circle architecture, the knowledge of our ancestors and their lives, are a mystery. So what was once a completely normal, essential part of human life is not understood from our modern frame of reference. And so now it's up to, why do you think our ancestors used standing stones? What do you think? Let's talk about that in the captain's cabin now that we're in it. And that's the end of the official part of the show. Let's go out for just a little break for a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back. So everybody, sit tight. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. All right, where are we? Let's do this. We're back. Thought I was going to do all those intros to all the different shows, didn't you? So we're back, and you are right, Michelle Cannon-Free. There are no coincidences. Helene Moody says, no empathy is a path to the multiverse. Listening is the key. You asked, but you're not hearing. It's because you are arguing. You are arguing, which is ego. Humble listening to everything it's going to tell you. There it is. Fox. I didn't know if that was directed at anybody. Helene says, or Foxy Roxy says, hope you're not interrupting my comments as arguing. That's very much not the case. That's good. So, Helene Moody says, wow, the elder druids, wizards taught me everything about what they wanted to teach me because I listened. Humbly, because they are masters above me in the greater scheme of life. I'm a master too. So are you saying they taught you this was a spiritual thing? Encounters you've had? That's interesting. Let's see. I'm just looking back at people's. Yeah, Steve Clark, just like the pyramids all around the world. Exactly. And all kinds of comments tonight. That's good. I'm glad you all wanted to discuss this stuff over in the chat room. So that's good. What do you think of all this? See, I'm going backwards through the comments, so I catch some things and then I go further back and I go, oh, that meant something different than I thought it meant. So how's everybody doing tonight? Glad you were here. Oh, I see Uncle John is here. John, you're down below my border because I've got all the pictures for tonight's show that I pulled up. They're all in a line, and that goes to the next line to bring my callers in. I didn't see you there until I saw a little movement down there, and I saw your head bobbing.
Do you somewhere, I think west of England and underwater somewhere, I think it's west of England, they found a village. Did they happen to have a stone circle?
Don't remember.
I don't either.
I don't remember.
I wonder if they were worried about climate change.
Yeah. I know they found villages in under the melted ice caps or glaciers in Greenland or Iceland. They found villages dating back, before the glaciers were there. So it was once warm up there before. So
there was a map.
New.
There's a map that was discovered somewhere that shows the coastlines of Antarctica at a time before it became official because Western civilization found it. But without ice.
Yeah.
As though it was a satellite photograph almost. So accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
They had marvelous abilities 5,000-10,000 years ago.
Yeah. And everybody, don't get too worked up over in the chat room. Seeing some terse comments back and forth. Don't do that. Just have fun here. It's about having fun. It's about learning things. So not everybody's on the same page all the time or the same level of thinking. Just be gracious to everybody. Everybody.
I'd be glad for an opportunity to learn something new tonight.
Yeah. So I see Sarah Yusuf is here. Yusuf.
Hey guys.
How you doing, Sarah?
I'm all right. I'm just really enjoying the topic.
Hello, Sarah.
I'm glad.
Hi,
We've got Michael too. Let's bring him in too.
Hey, bud.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, yeah.
So, Sarah, what's up? What strikes you tonight? What would you take away from what we talked about tonight and say that's the thing that intrigues me about this stuff?
I mean, there's several things. One is that sometimes the materials of these actual stone circles are not local native materials, but the closest areas that may have, the composite materials to make up the cairns and everything. It's like more than like 100 miles away, So there's this seems to be definitely a lost technology at play here.
Yes.
And that what we have now and what we're just considering stone circles, if they are quarried or whatever by man or something else, it seems like there's still degradation in the actual rock itself, like it's been crumbling or whatever. So for all we know, these could be just the basis of a different structure.
Sure.
Where they have cross beams and all that stuff. So, but I mean, it's really fascinating because we somehow went from a technology of being able to build the pyramids and giant giant, boulders and being able to move that to not be able to do that stuff sort of now, but without a
Right. Right.
Right.
So
I suppose, we
Yeah.
try to do it all with machinery, but back then they put hundreds of people pulling ropes.
yeah, and even so,
So-
some of the structures they have and like you said, a very finite laser like precision. To
Right.
be able to line it up with astrologically. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard enough just to carry it this way. I said, okay, we're gonna leave it here.
Yeah.
Hey, Scotty, I got a question for Sarah with her background because the other day you said where she's Islam or is Islamic. My bad. What do you think about when they destroyed the winged horses and stuff like that in Iraq? That I've got pictures with me. The great big, I forget what they're called. Scotty's probably better with that or me, whatever. But some of the sets had went in and took jackhammers and explosives to destroy the monoliths.
Oh, you're talking the extremists that went
Yeah.
in.
I mean that's more of the extremist type of elements that will, their main focus is, against what's the word I'm looking for, Scotty? Not polytheism, but worshiping of objects and stuff. So I mean, because in reality, Islam, and it says, in the Quran, you have to be tolerant. I mean, because
Yeah.
one way is not one way is not the main way. There's many ways to Rome, as it were. And God has created a multitude of things. So I mean, for what one way is work for one person may be something else, and God knows how to utilize both to get whatever ends that God wants.
Right.
So
I've often wondered about that because when I was older, these things was all like, it looked like they had cookie cuttered every one of them.
yeah, I mean that's basically that some people have taken to any extreme. The idea of the word I was looking for is idolatry. Worshiping things versus focusing on God itself, which has no.
And I've been in trouble before. I've told people over the years, different religions have came in. The Aztecs was exterminated. All of their belief systems was exterminated. The priests told them, go over and burn their history and convert all of them to this, or don't let them live. And I've heard in a lot of different sets, either they adapt or they die. And and it's very it's very what's the word? I've been cold outside. I've been out working on the truck. My nose is running. I was going to ask Scotty if he needed a Ricola. I heard him coughing. Ricola works, but no, there is a lot of lost and forgotten history that has either been covered up in the same way when Rome came into England.
Right.
If you watch what was that show I watched? The same lady that played in Yellowstone played as on Britannica. Remember, I binge watched that whole series, and and they hated the Druids. Oh, and then ask them where are your gods now, and then kill them. In the same way with any Native American beliefs they had here when they came over here, they're like, oh no, you're Christian now, to the point where they jerked them up and put them in to what they called Indian schools. We need to learn to adapt.
And it's also, it attends to the cyclical nature of, whenever you have a clash of cultures, it's like you said, some are adapt or die. I mean, if you look at, what happened to the Native Americans, they were forced into schools, forced into Christianity. The Hawaiians have been through that. It's just one of those cultural cycles. You don't see, a lot. You don't see many polytheistic Romans nowadays than you see, Christians. I mean, they may, exist in pockets, but, monotheism seems to be ruling the day for now.
Let me just say there's something in the chat room with some of the discussion that I'm kind of half reading and half listening to Sarah and Michael. And if
Well, we
guys,
can talk for a while.
if you're having an issue with the way somebody is interpreting what you're saying, or not hearing you the way you want to be heard, or misinterpreting what you're saying, just everybody, we need to be. I don't care what language we're speaking. We're all speaking English of a certain type, so we can understand each other.
Yeah.
Let's just have a good time in here. I don't think when you're typing in a chat room, this is secondhand communication at its best or worst, because you're not hearing vocal inflection. You don't know all the nuance of communication. If I type, dastardly as a word in text in a chat window, it's different than if I speak it dastardly. It's all interpretation. There's nuance. So everybody appreciate the fact that we aren't getting the nuance of everything everybody is saying. I don't think anybody's going out of the way to offend anybody or misunderstand anybody. We can, if you disagree with the point somebody's making, it's okay to discuss that. Perfectly fine. Discuss it. Just don't nobody, to use proper English, don't nobody get too riled up. It's just a chat room. And we're just all talking. We're all having a good time. So don't take anything too personally, and enjoy yourselves.
Open forum
Enough
for
about
open discussion, and we should be very proud that we live in a country that we can have open discussion and a share of ideals. Without
Thanks, Jeremy.
whatever. And I see Uncle John over there eating popcorn. He took a page out of your page the other day.
Oh, I wish I had popcorn here. Thanks.
Mom wanted popcorn just before I came back here, and it smelled pretty good after I made it, so I brought some.
Oh, see, Helene, I will say this. I'll respond directly. Being nasty to an autistic person shows you up. Not me. It's ableist and sexist. I'm done, Scotty. Okay, Helene, I can't control that. You've been here and left before in the past. I don't want you to be easily offended. I want you to be thick-skinned when you come in here. If you've got something to say and somebody says something that you take personally, make sure you are understanding what they're saying before you get too worked up. Everybody.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have you here and enjoy yourself, but don't be too heavy-handed with anybody, because we're just typing. If you guys want to call in and talk about stuff, let's call in and talk about stuff.
Me and Scotty makes good moderators, don't we, Scotty?
What's that?
I said we'll make a good moderator set, won't we?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
And Uncle John will sit there and eat popcorn.
Everybody just have fun. That's what this is here for, to enjoy something and learn something. And Helene, I'll be very honest. I'm reading your post. I'm not understanding your context to begin with. I was just reading it and enjoying what you're saying. You guys obviously had something going on way back in the chat, because I don't know the context of any of it. And so don't let it and don't be that way. I would just say to anybody, I'd say it to my own wife, who I love immensely, Helene, don't be too hasty. Just enjoy and be light. And this isn't a life or death thing, this chat room. This is just having fun and talking about the show. And if it's a heavy-handed thing, let's talk about it. You can call in, we'll talk about it. Boom. That's it. That's all I got to say now. Let's move on.
Okay. Oh, is it time for your shameless plug for your book that is also an audiobook? With everything I have going on between school and, my dad.
And you can find this all in my audiobook for $29.95.
Oh, yeah.
Not that much money.
I tried to read a few pages a day with everything I got going on with family issues and all that. And I got to talk to Wendy a little bit about it, and she smoothed it down. She said, remember, Michael, stay calm, breathe, walk away. Just walk
Why
away.
Are you disagreeing with stuff I wrote in my book?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, with family crap. You know what I'm saying?
I was jump in your shit if you did.
And let me tell you how you screwed up on page 84.
Yes.
That's like something I would do.
I will tell you on page 83. Oh, you know what John Ward did? I told this story once before. John Ward and I wrote that book together, The Exodus Reality. And it was our two different theories on the historical Moses, both set within the same dynastic house in 18th dynasty Egypt, just a few generations apart. And he was very convinced that his point of view was the right one, and I was very convinced mine was the right one.
And you're both correct.
And you're both
And
wrong.
we're both no, only I'm correct. John is just he presents his case well, but I'm correct.
But you know what I'm saying?
But,
with everything I got going on,
I will say this. John wrote, it was David Weatherly, shaman, who bought one of our books. And his presentation at the Paradigm Symposium, that's where he bought the book. And he was sitting with John and I, and we both signed the book for him. And David had spoken on tulpas, the manifestation of things. So John writes, he says, he signs it on the inside the front cover, and he writes, David, he says, Scotty's theory, he says, on Senenmut, he says, it's very intriguing. And he says his best parts starting on page 286. Yeah. And that's how he leaves it, John Ward. And you turn to 286, it's the blank page after the last page of the bibliography. So that's what his best parts are on 286.
No, but what I was saying, I haven't even had time here to even read more than like a couple pages, and with everything going on, and I have figured out when tragedy hits around, it brings all the decent people in your family out. Let me tell you, they come crawling out of the woodworks. Yeah. So I'm like, and that's what I told her, and I told her, that I really would like to, get more stuff done, including reading a book, and try to figure out what the next book I want to get you to send me, because Tam O'Hare or Sword in the Clay or something. And
I have to get some more Tam O'Hares and Sword in the Clay. I'm all out of them. So
you're gonna make me order it from Amazon, pay double.
Yeah, you might have to order it.
Yeah.
Go to the website and order it. If you order Sword in the Clay, go to theswordintheclay.com.
Well, I was going to say,
and so can everyone else.
Yeah, so can everybody else.
Yeah, swordintheclay.com.
Much, but I am good for a shameless plug, right?
Yes.
Michael's not a paid spokesperson.
No,
it's not a what? A what?
Not
a paid spokesperson.
Oh, there you go. Yes, he's not paid.
No,
no disclaimer rolling below.
Yeah. I had to wait.
Michael is a paid actor.
Yeah, only portray me, and that's what I tell people. The persona you see on the camera is not what the people who know me see all the time. On your show, or on Wicked Women with Wendy, or even with KB, when I sit in with him or sit in with you or whatever, I said, you only see what comes out of my camera, and it's what I want to portray. And we're here for a good time, and I don't know why. People get back and forth. I look forward to Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and Friday nights, and sometimes Sunday morning when me and Poseidon don't have to go get educated at a puppy school. So I don't get to do Sunday mornings now because I'm getting him ready to go to puppy school. And it's to have a good time. It is to exchange information and ideals. If you don't like somebody's ideal or their information, roll it up, throw it away. Nobody's holding a gun to your head telling you that you have to believe a certain way.
Well, you shouldn't be in puppy school on Sunday morning. You should be in church.
Me and the preacher had that same discussion. I told, but that's what I told him.
My preacher.
Yeah, and no, he said something about a food truck. He said, "You don't go to church. Why don't you let me borrow your food truck for?" I said, "I might be a godless heathen, but I am a good neighbor." And he just said, "Oh, okay." And I left that conversation with, and remember, I'm ordained just like you. And he's like,
and did you let him borrow your food truck?
Hey, the next time they want to feed all the homeless people in the community, I'll put gas in it and help him stock it.
That's cool.
And but no, that's what I'm telling. But when you tell people that you do not believe the same way they do, they said, "Oh, are you Wiccan?" No, 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 no. I'm not Wiccan. Oh, are you what do you call atheist? No, I'm not an atheist. And they're like, well, what are you? Well, I'm other. And they're like,
Yeah,
well, can
I'm
you
other.
explain it?
I'm
I'm
that
other.
little box. Chick, other.
Yeah, other. And cause somebody asked Wendy that the other day. Well,
Doctor,
doctor, it's it.
hey
That's what.
doc,
Yeah,
isn't
doc.
it a more interesting hour to spend time with someone who either has a point of view you've never heard before or completely disagrees with you, but is not an angry
Yeah, that's it.
disagreement,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
actually listen to each other, and you don't change your mind,
No.
but
And
you come away a more complete person.
I
Both of you.
learn more from people who don't get pissed at me for not believing what they
yeah,
believe.
that's it.
And of course, I'm not a pushover when it comes to that stuff either. See, I know everything and I'm right about everything.
yeah,
Therefore,
that's what I told a bunch of my
you
ex-wives.
can't offend me with your wrong ways.
And they say, "Oh dear God," I said, "Yes, you rang." No,
Sarah, I was waiting for you
no,
to
I have actually
comment
saw.
on that or agree with me or something.
I have actually saw Scotty engage in back and forth while I'm been on the phone with him, video chatting. I think it's the night I ordered the book. And there's a gentleman who comes on here. Y'all seen him? He's what is it? Niles, where he's from? What is it? Oh,
He's Irish.
Irish.
He's Irish. Niall, where are you tonight?
Yeah, my drunken Irish dad. And and I have seen them go back and forth, but he still comes on, and he's not angry. He's not the angry drunk Irishman. You know what I'm
No.
saying? He's just very.
I love Niall. And
Yeah,
there's
that's
times he comes across like a pompous ass, but there's times I come across like a pompous ass. So I can handle him.
Well, if he's Irish,
He's Irish.
Yeah,
But I got to tell you, I love him and I appreciate him. And there's a strong draw I have to Niall.
Yeah.
I like the way he thinks. I don't agree with a lot of what he thinks,
Yeah.
but I don't have to.
No.
So yeah, Niall's a good man.
Like they always told me in the army. They said, "Oh, you're being an individual today." I was like, "Yep, I am today. I'm being an individual." But no,
Yeah.
and that's one
I am
thing.
an army of one.
That's
Tell
it.
them. Hail, fall back on their advertising campaign from
that's
the
it.
early 2000s. I am an army of one.
That's it. I am the
The
mission.
advertising says so.
That's it. But and that's what I'm telling you. I like a good spirited debate. I don't want somebody that agrees with me all the time. I don't want a whole colleagues of yes men, because even though I have a very high opinion of myself and think I'm the smartest person in the room most of the time, I still screw up and make mistakes.
Sure.
And and I say that being,
And we can point them out. We can all point them out.
I had my son in the truck yesterday, and we was going somewhere after we went and saw my dad, and made some decisions for that. And I asked him something, and he looked at me. I said, "James, that is a facetious answer." He said, "I don't know what the hell that is. Don't talk to me like that." I said, "Google it." And he said, "Do what?" I said, "If you don't learn nothing else tonight, son, you'll learn a goddamn new word." And he's like, "What do you use big words for?" I said, "Because it makes your eyes roll in your head and your ears smoke." All right. I said, "Because I can." I said, "I prefer not to."
It's like an old thing we used to say when we were in college, and I want to put it on a T-shirt. I like to read because it makes me talk real good.
It made me talk real good. That's it. And that's what I tell people. I talked to my professor today, not Professor Bowers, and the one at where I go to school, and she's like, "Your accent." I was like, "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" She's like, "Well, Scott, you want to take psychology?" She's talking real proper. I said, "Well, people over here needs help too." I said, "We got mental health everywhere." She's like, "No, you stop that." I said, "Don't tell me my accent makes me not capable of taking a certain college course, because I keep a pretty good average on my grades." And she's like, "Well, I guess there's help for mental health professionals everywhere, don't they?" I said, "Well, we do have a few weirdos here too, but a lot of times when when they hear the accent, they're like, 'You gonna take what?'"
I got to tell you, Michael. No offense, I love you, brother, but there are times you come across very Boomhauser to me.
That's it.
You will say, "Yeah, and so I'm working on my truck. I was just going down. I was going down and going in the yard." And she would say to me, "And got pissed at me," and I'm like, "Whatever, fuck."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I don't speak Southern. And
But and Wendy has told
How
me.
do you think I feel?
oh, I'll bet. Miss Massachusetts.
Oh,
Wait, you're
yeah. She lives down around. She's not too far from me.
Oh, that's right. You're Virginia. That's right.
Yeah,
Virginia.
yeah. They roll
We
in
had
and
this discussion once before.
say, hey, here I got this pain over here on my side. Can you go over and look at this? And it's like, dang, man. And no, but if I talk to Wendy quite a bit during the day, my accent softens a lot because she ain't as polite or as funny as you are when she says, "Speak English."
Speak English, Michael.
Speak English. And
Yeah.
but
Professor Bauer, are you in backstage? Oh, I didn't even see you there. I got 2 rows of windows here.
Oh, but if you want to hear a funny conversation,
Professor Bauer is now in the building.
When I speak to her mom with that very old English accent,
thank you, Susie Q,
and my very Southern, like you said, boom hair almost accent, and we're having a conversation, and I told her, I said, I cannot wait till we're in the same room so we can have a proper cup of tea. She said, "You're not going to have no spoon in it." I'm like, okay. Everything I've done in my life is fine, but it is very barbaric to drink your tea with a spoon in it.
And yes, Michelle Cannon Free, go on stage. When you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
Sitting on her tits.
You know where that's from?
I love that movie.
Yeah, been there too.
Hey, I love things about the Southern turn of phrase. The comment, bless his little heart.
Oh yeah, and when somebody tells you that,
it sounds so compassionate, but it means you're a special kind of stupid.
Yeah, that's pretty much what that means.
I think they came up
probably
with
more caustic than that even.
Yeah, very passive aggressive. You know what I'm saying? Very.
Yeah. So when I moved to Atlanta from Chicago, and I'm originally from California, so ergo no accent. But when I moved to Atlanta, I was told about all this Southern hospitality, and they said, keep an eye out for people who say, "Oh, bless your heart," because they're smiling at you, but they got a knife behind their back.
Right.
And I went, yeah, okay. And I wanted to jump in earlier. I've been sitting backstage here. Hell, I've cooked dinner. I've had 3 beers. I've backstage for so long that I almost forgot what I wanted to talk about. Beers. But I wanted to jump in on this whole idea of having disparate views on things, and wanted to throw it at Scotty again, because I got to tell you, I love you, brother. You are a incredibly intelligent and well-researched individual, but your whole thing about that carving on Abydos is wrong. Okay.
It's such bullshit.
It is. That there is no doubt that is not something that had been crumbled and then redone and everything else. There is no possible way, because none of the other artifacts, although the carvings around it, even show anything similar. So if indeed your thesis about this being something that eventually crumbled and then was remade into these objects is true, then why did they only do that one particular stela?
There you go again, misquoting me. I never said anything crumbled. It's a product of erasure. Which every pharaoh did it along the way. You see it at Gebel El Silsila, John and Maria's site. You'll see it the Speas of Horemheb, that little building right there that dates back. It's supposed to be a Horemheb. Who was Horemheb? He was the general underneath Tutankhamun, King Tut, who took over as pharaoh. And so it's his place until you do looking a little closer. You do some infrared photography, and you know what you find out? You find out that it's actually Hatshepsut's Speas. And Horemheb claimed some of it, left some of it there. Others he scraped off, which is erasure, and put his own. But infrared shows the original carving there. Abydos.
But why doesn't that
Same
show
thing.
up on the other adjoining stelas? I mean,
I don't
there's-
know. I haven't read anything about what they've done with the other stelas. Maybe they didn't have that erasure being carried out on anything but the lintel there.
So
I
my
don't
biggest
know.
problem with all of Egyptology is the fact that they only go back to what is it? Akhenaten, I think, is one of the first ones that they say is in the one of the first dynasties. But all of the Egyptology has stories of kings and by the way, pharaohs is not the right term. Pharaohs is not what they were called.
No.
And that's one of the fallacies of the language translation and part of what you were talking about earlier. But they've got stories and mythos of kings that ruled tens of thousands of years, going back almost 200,000 years, and Egyptology just completely dismisses all of that as myth, as opposed to, well, what were these guys writing about? Because they're very matter of fact. They don't talk about it as some kind of mythos. And that kind of goes back to the thing that you were talking about earlier in the show, which is, for me, I look at history as myth and myth as history. And when I do that, I start to see things, they start to make much more sense. And
Thank you, Jeremy.
Mr. Hansen, killing it.
Woo!
Oh,
Field guy, sorry to interrupt you. Field guy said that's either a 20 or a 200. I thought it was 2,000. So it's all interpretation, boys.
And I
Anyway,
think,
go ahead, Professor.
and I think that, Sarah, it's great to talk with you again. It's been many, many moons. And we've got a great big harvest full moon out there tonight.
Yeah.
But when you talk about, for example, the Islamic or the Muslim history, I am just fascinated at how much is completely ignored about the importance of what Islam brought, not only in the theological sense, but also in math and sciences and art. I mean, what an amazing culture and what it brought to civilization that we know today. And I just, for one, think that it's overlooked and to the detriment of all of us to boot. So this whole history thing, whether you're talking about philosophy or science or theologies, it doesn't matter. It's all been manipulated and mangled from my perspective, and you can't believe any of it. It's all speculation, just as reality is.
For me, it's not about belief. And you and I have talked about this many times. It's not about belief. I don't believe something. Belief is a faith thing. So I don't, the facts I believe, we still use that word, even though we go, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't mean belief, because belief is about putting your faith in something. It's about believing something that, it's like a defined belief. You believe something,
Mm-hmm.
It's there are facts that I accept, and there are things that I choose to believe. And the Abydos lintel is one of them. I used to look at the Abydos lintel and say, whoa. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, you can look it up. Abydos, Abidos. The lintel that goes over the door frame, ancient Egyptian. It's got hieroglyphics that look like a helicopter, a UFO,
a boat,
a
tank,
and there's something else in a tank. There's like 4 or 5 things in it. And yet, I have demonstrated through looking at whose temple that was and how many times it changed hands in dynastic period, how that inscription was a single inscription, then somebody scraped part of it off, put their new inscription in place, and it read something different, and then somebody else scraped all of that off, put this in place. This is what they did on every temple. This is why Ramses the Great, look at his inscriptions on anything. They're like 4 inches deep, dug into the stonework. Why? He didn't want anybody scraping off his stuff. You can't scrape 4 inches off a stone and have anything left. And so
he wrote it in bold text.
Yeah, he wrote it in bold text.
Old italic. Yeah.
Embossed.
He overscored several times. Pharaoh.
But speaking of that, I got Scotty here and I got Professor Bowers. I want to
And
ask you,
so, but the Amadas lintel has got erasure, and I've shown the different stages of the erasure and how then after they were done being used and the thing was buried in the sand, there was erosion of the hieroglyphs. And as it started to erode, it would start to reveal some of what was beneath. And you had these shapes that would come out. And so in a sense, and so what I would do is I'd start falling back on periodelia and say, oh, your eye is making this into something it's not, because it's several layers of erasure that are showing different things. Now, I could be wrong, but
Well, I think it
probably
falls
not.
into that pareidolia class in a lot of cases,
Pareidolia.
right? And I don't know that what I think or what you think is the actual facts of that
Right.
particular piece of evidence. It's what's really enjoyable for me is to toss the speculation of different concepts
Yes.
onto the
Yes.
table, throw a little turd out there and then bounce it around and see what it sticks to and what it bounces off of. Because that's where, like you were saying, Uncle John, to me the real experience of exploration is being able to have a multitude of different views and being able to, it doesn't have to be a debate. It's just a discussion. And when you have an open mind and you realize that, again, Jerry McKenzie says, belief is subjective. Everything is subjective. The facts that we have been given about pick the knowledge domain are all subjective. Just recently we've had the whole scientific community, particularly the astrophysics and the quantum physics and quantum mechanics field, they've been tossed on their ass because the James Webb Space Telescope has now found that 13.8 billion years ago, when the quote unquote Big Bang happened, has now been doubled. It's been pushed back.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, so first of all,
But the science was settled.
that's right. And the whole thing about any subject that has a prominence in the social discourse on any topic, right now we're going through a great deal of crazy stuff with the whole conspiracy theorist thing, right? Everybody's that is rogue in the paradigm is considered or labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
Well, right now, based on the conspiracies that I've followed for the last 30 plus years, the conspiracy theorists are batting 20-0. Because we're starting to see all these things, UFOs, oh, that's BS. JFK being taken out by the deep state or the CIA, oh, that's bullshit. Climate change is, this massive thing that's going to change humanity, and it can only be fixed by paying homage through taxes to those who are promoting this stuff. At the end of the day, all you have to do is say, if there's money involved in where there's profit for any particular subject, then those are the ones that are probably wrong. The rogue independent citizen journalists and scientists that have no money involved, they have nothing to gain other than their own research and trying to find the truth. That's why they seem to be winning, is because they're not getting paid. They're not making any money off this stuff. The people who are making money are the ones pushing agendas that have a boatload of holes and questions about, the subject. We just saw this whole thing with the spamdemic crap that we just all went through, and they're trying to relight that fuse again.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen because they failed so miserably at executing that and promoting it that people aren't going to buy it again.
Right.
And as time has gone on and more evidence, factual evidence has actually come out, you look at it and you go, well, you guys, you pushed something and you were completely wrong about it. Masks were completely wrong. Lockdowns were completely wrong. What the actual virus was completely wrong. And
Where it came from.
Yeah, did you? And so they finally came out with that. And now Fauci's getting his ass handed to him because secret emails of him visiting the CIA to push this stuff is coming out. So all of the things that we are told that we need to pay attention to, that are the definitive truth of whatever the subject may be, has fallen apart. Anybody with expert or some 3-letter acronym tattooed on the ass end of their name has failed miserably. So the trust in the officialdom has severely eroded, and they've done it to themselves. So now you have individuals and independents and citizens who are not on the money-making end of whatever the subject is, starting to rise to the top as it relates to credibility, because everybody else has been pushing this stuff. And again, history is one of the big ones that's kind of an underlier. Our history has been so mangled and manipulated for at least the last few hundred years, but more accurately over the last several thousand years. And we have a history that's complete bullshit. And the more you look at it, and the more evidence and more things you find, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to toss Abydos in there. It's like, well, there's an example of history and archaeology that is highly questionable.
It's like when I did the show on Wednesday night about the Osage murders, Killers of the Flower Moon. That is a little piece of history I had never heard about until about 4 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk about history is bullshit, now that goes along with a lot of history I'd learned. And I maybe somewhere along the way heard something about the Osage murders and never paid it much mind. But I didn't know a thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I looked it up and said, somebody wrote stuff about this and somebody's piecing this together a little better. I love historical mysteries. I love people who, and I talked about that show with Dr. Joanne Fletcher, Egyptologist, who's done a lot of shows on Egypt on TV. You've seen her if you've seen any of these Egyptian documentaries. She always wears the black flowing like silk or cotton, and she's got the bright red hair. She's in her 50s now, but fabulous Egyptologist. And they did this show on forensics of ancient mummies that they haven't been able to identify. And they go through, and it's a very interesting show. I love a great mystery. I also love reading about things, seeing things that we think we've got the answers to, or we've known this answer for hundreds and hundreds of years. Oh, but wait a minute. It's all different now because of this thing. Changes everything. It's what I like about it. It's like, and I've used this before. And by the way, before I get into this example, Unleashed Jeremy Hansen said, how many pyramids are still lost, even in the Valley of the Kings? There's none in the Valley of the Kings. That's actually a fairly small enclosed place with rock escarpments all around you. The Valley of the Kings. You can walk through it in 10 minutes. There's just tombs everywhere. And, you go to the other side of one of these escarpments, just right on the other side. You could climb up and over, it's not that far, and end up over on the other side, Hatshepsut's temple, the other temples on the West Bank there. You drive around and you're there in 10 minutes from Valley of the Kings. But there's a little village there at Deir el Medina. And that is a servant village, a lower class village, I guess you'd call it. But there's little pyramids, so the really tall, narrow ones. They were graves. They're about 18 feet tall, something like that. And so there's some of those. But they say there's about, I thought I just heard this again recently, that there were over 300 pyramids built in Egypt, and that there's still 137 that are covered by the sands.
What about all the ones in the Sudan?
Yeah.
I mean, and those are
all
obelisk shaped, but they're all pyramids, and nobody knows.
It wasn't LIDAR, I don't think, but some kind of radar technology from a satellite and picked up just in the area around Giza, I think it was. I may have my facts wrong, but like 37 more pyramids right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all buried in the sand. And they pick them up on radar. So it's very interesting stuff. But now I forgot the
the whole of northern Africa is supposedly overrun with roads and cities and trade centers and
The
things
Sahara.
that are buried.
Yeah, there's Jimmy over at Bright Insight did a live stream with Ben Davidson over at Suspicious Observers tonight, and Jimmy's been the one that's been pushing the Riat structure over in not Maldives, over off the east, the west coast of Africa, the giant eye that's in the sand, as being the place where Atlantis was. And
yeah,
it's fascinating the more that's uncovered. And like Scotty and I've talked many times, we are one turn of the spade in the dirt of finding something that completely changes history.
Right.
And I for one am more excited about what's happening now and what's going on in the future to correct a lot of this nonsense that's been cobbled together and carefully crafted and curated and shoved down our throats and up our butts, as you know, this is the state of reality that we all inhabit, because it's clearly not. And there's so much information, so much yet to be discovered, that I for one am just excited as hell about, you know, the future and what people are going to find on this independent researcher, the citizen journalist, the citizens, the people. The people are rising in a number of ways, and that's where the real truth of reality, I think, is starting to shine. Because officialdom has just botched it big time. These folks, the more power they have, the tighter they squeeze on the minds of the people, and the people are squirting out of the squeeze.
I like that. You need that on a shirt.
Put it this way: the tighter you try to hold a fistful of sand, the more grains slip between your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still get a bunch in there. It's, you know.
Sarah, what's your thoughts on all this rambling BS that's been spewed forth here?
Well, you make an interesting point in that the way, you know, the narrative has been growing and evolving, it's sort of taking advantage on the limitations of the mind. Like we are constantly, if we could see everything all at once, we'd definitely be overstimulated. We couldn't make sense of anything. For us to make sense, then we have to narrow the focus, put blinders on, but then you may miss the big picture because you're focused on in one area, what's right in front of you. So, I mean, yeah, there's that. And of course, there's going to be constant, you know, surprises and disclosures that are going to change what we perceive in our reality. Look what happened when we went from a flat Earth perspective, or we found out that, you know, the Earth, the universe doesn't revolve around the Earth, you know, instead of going around the sun and all that stuff. I mean, and a lot of it, you know, is going to be relative to the observer, because when you get down to it, I mean, whether the Earth goes around the sun or, you know, or whatever, at the most, I can't talk. Most of the core is that most people are going to mostly care about what happens in reference to them. You know, that's going to be the highest priority, which is probably going to be the driver of how perception is going to be evolving. So, I mean, we can sit here and talk about, you know, esoteric phenomena, but I mean, from the day to day, that's what, people are really going to care about.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting point about the flat Earth perspective. If you back out at 30,000 feet and you look down on that model, that was all Western belief and philosophy, which was what science was called and considered, for the last few thousand years. Hindus, Chinese, the ancient civilizations in Asia, none of them thought that. It was only the Western folks that thought about, is there this concept of flat Earth? And it was primarily driven by religion and primarily driven by these Christian nuts who got it all wrong and wanted to have the entire definition of reality that revolved around them. Because
right. I mean,
they were the
it's a power
representative.
grab. I mean, if you look at
Right.
concepts like manifest destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, definitely the case, which I will, I'll just say there was one joke that I heard, which, I think it was on Facebook or somewhere. They said that the human body is, our world and the human body is mostly made up of water, uncarbonated water. So technically we all are flat.
Nice.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I had a conversation one time with an Islamic gentleman who we got to talking about differences in faith. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting to find out in the end that what God wanted us to do was appreciate what he'd given us and worship him for that. And we were so busy writing in rules that we now kill each other over differences, but we all agree there's just one God. And he looked at me and he said, I have no way to argue with that.
Well, he
may have thought of some later, but it caught him so off guard.
Even that is based on a belief system that there is a creator that gave birth to us as humans.
Of course.
And if you look at the Egyptian writings and the Sumerians and the Babylonians and the Akkadians, their history of how we came about, the Dogon, Hindus, all of that creation story comes from this controlled theology about, trying to keep people herded and keep them dumbed down. But all these other systems, all these histories said, hey, people up there came down here, they screwed with us, and they made us to go do things. Essentially, the human race is actually a tool. If you look at all these ancient mythos about, the cosmology of creation, we were created as an asset for other beings. And you can easily fit Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all into that same funnel because they essentially say the same thing. It may be monotheistic, but when you expand the data, the available data, and you look at why are we here, these folks wrote this down a long time ago.
In theological discussions, we had them in seminary. We had when Ian Punnett was doing radio here in the Twin Cities. He had the Dead Theologians Society. We had every other Tuesday, I want to say, at one of the big bookstores in town, and we talked about this stuff. And we talked about God making man and all these different theological points of view. And I said, what seems interesting to me as we talk about all of this stuff.
Pardon me.
Is that yeah. Oh, see you, John. We'll be right here, John. Is that God seemingly, from all the stories we have, if we're to believe what we were taught in our faith books, he owns us. We're his. He made us out of nothing. We are his to do with as he pleases. Who the hell are we to complain about what his choice is? We're the created being. He's the creator. He can do whatever the hell he wants, is what it comes down to.
And Jeremy says he believes 100% that we have a creator. I think that there is absolutely that we have a creator. The question is the definition of that creator.
Right.
Because, believing in an invisible, non-corporeal, all-seeing, all-knowing, all-everywhere entity really talks to the energy of the cosmos as opposed to an individual entity. But even in Taoism that I subscribe to, one of the first sentences is that which can be described or said to be the Tao is not the Tao. You go back to the philosophical debates in the Renaissance between the scientists, the materialists, and the theologians.
Is that because of creating boundaries?
Well, I think that's probably part of why they use this, but you find if you look at the debates in the Renaissance and the Enlightenment period, you look at the words that they use to describe God and space. What is space? It's everywhere. It's incorporeal, and it those same attributes are attributed to this God person or this God entity. And you realize that the commonality in the way that different systems tried to describe the hierarchy of our existence, they all use the same definitions, but they all just describe different words to those definitions. So a God, whether it's the God of Abraham or if it's Shiva, or if it's the Dogon, the entities that came from the dog star Sirius. They all have some kind of power that they came down. And this is the thing with all of the Western belief systems, there is a coming down of an entity that breathes or creates this thing called man. And the whole idea of taking a rib out and doing all those stuff, I mean, that kind of goes sideways for me, but they all have the same basis of belief or construct. So there is a creator. It's most likely there are creators, and this is illuminated in the book of Genesis. God made they made man in our image. Our is plural.
Yep.
El, or the Elohim, is actually a plural word.
And then, of course, theologians will debate forever on whether or not that plurality is a physical plurality or a multiplicity of majesty and power.
Right.
I've seen that argument so many times.
And none of it can be definitively proven. And that's one of the hallmarks of being able to maintain the control, is that you can't say, nobody can prove one way or the other. They can only say they believe, or here's a set of information that they use to defend the definitions that they've ascribed to whatever the entity or entities may be. The more I look at this stuff, and especially now that we're getting into disclosure season, and we're starting to see more of this revealing of what I call our cosmic cousins, because I think other species of humanoid construct, it seems to be a natural part of the way that the cosmos expresses itself. Because it doesn't matter whether you're seeing Bigfoot or you're seeing paranormal or you're seeing some, disembodied spirits or whatever, they all pretty much have the same kind of construct. They've got a head, they've got a body, they've got arms, they speak, they have mouths and ears. And there's all these commonalities, regardless of what dimension you look at for the information of other entities. Well, to me, if the consciousness creates the cosmos, and one of the habits and nature of consciousness is energy. Energy is expressed in frequencies, and therefore, if we are the result of this conscious expression of reality through energy, then why can't there be other us's? Why can't there be other manifestations of this humanoid expression? Why can't there be all manner of different types of spirits and entities and things that manifest in ways that we don't even understand? We have a very limited understanding and perspective of the reality in the universe that we inhabit, extremely limited. And on top of that, as I was saying, it's been mangled and manipulated to the degree that we really don't know. But what we do know is we don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I do have one question though. What do you guys think about the need for a systemic construct? To having something, to believe in. I mean, I do ascribe to, a causal relationship between mind, body, and spirit. Body being the physical, mind, being the thought thought form of energy, or and then the interdimensional self that would be the spiritual aspect of it. So I mean, the fact there was a old quote which I can't remember the whole of it, but they say that people need stories to survive.
Sure.
So where would that
I think that
where all this comes from, so where we find function,
well, I think the words I would use are reason and meaning, right? So if you go back to the ancient scripts and the cosmology of these other civilizations, it was clear that what we've been created as an asset, as a tool set for these other species. So there was an original reason for our creation, which was to be put to work for these other folks.
Well,
and that's common across all belief systems. And that's what God did, right? God said, I'm going to create man because depending on how you interpret it, I'm lonely, or I want to share my creation or whatever. Well, he apparently created us with a very limited set of information about ourselves and a very limited set of what we can do. I have subscribed to the idea that we are spiritual beings having a material experience, and that spirit is something that is the unique frequency stamp of creation. So consciousness has, and this is the way I couch things to make sense for me, consciousness has a natural habit of being constantly in motion. That motion is expressed in what we call creation. It's always creating something new. So therefore, another habit or nature of consciousness is novelty. It's always looking for something new, or it's always in the habit of creating something new. So we are the result of consciousness in motion of creation, looking for novelty. That creation and the motion and creation and novelty are what is expressed through this thing we call energy. And there's all these different permutations and expressions of energy, but one of the common constructs of energy is frequencies. So I look at us as we are individual frequency stamps of consciousness. Therefore, we are from the creator, because consciousness is the creator. It answers all of the questions for me in all of these different theologies and belief systems, and really simplifies it so that there isn't, it removes all of this control construct.
Having submission.
Right. There's this whole idea of you have to submit, you have to acquiesce to the request of the creator. and all of that. That's just a construct that I think was put on the actual reality of us just being individual expressions of consciousness. Because we do that, that's why we create. That's why we are constantly in motion ourselves, because that's what consciousness does. So we're always in motion. We're always seeking novelty. We're always looking for something new. And from that, the people that were in charge said, well, we got to give them a reason to exist and meaning to themselves, because they're not going to understand this whole consciousness thing. That's way beyond what we want them to know, because if they knew that, they would be free. They would be free of any kind of shackles that we've put on them to control them.
Isn't that what you have in the Garden of Eden story? If you look at it, just look at what's written there without going into all the breaking down every passage, every little bit of the language, all the historical context, and so on. Doesn't the story itself say, and Adam or Eve was beguiled by the serpent, or by Nakash, and she took the fruit and gave the fruit also to Adam, who ate of it, and suddenly their eyes were opened. And what did it say? There are slightly different translations of this. What God said after that: the humans have eaten of the tree in the middle of the garden, or the tree of the knowledge of good and evil,
Tree of knowledge,
and have become just like us.
Yes.
Let us therefore prevent them from eating also of the tree of life, lest they become gods.
And that just makes my point.
Yeah. And my whole question with that, when I first read that with a new light as I was researching it, was a couple of things occurred to me there. Why did God have a problem with his creation becoming enlightened? Or was it because his creation was never meant to be enlightened?
Isn't that an example of a control construct that was put on it?
That's a control construct.
Because that was not in the original writings of the cosmologies of these other cultures. We were created. We apparently were manipulated genetically, because if you look at our genome, the second genome is missing. It's been removed, which is kind of weird.
I think we'll just take that out of there.
Yeah, and you go, well, because all other primates have 24 chromosomes, we have 23. So you go, okay, well, there's some science for you.
We're not primates.
we're one
be happier as chimps.
Yeah, or one chromosome from monkeying around, right?
Right.
But when you start looking at these things, it's clear that there was something that was done to manifest man. It's in the writings, it's in the science, it's in the knowledge and information that we've seemed to be gleaning as we go along. But the idea that it's been packaged into what we have what we call theologies has been the mental control menagerie that has kept us from understanding the reality now of who we are. And that is what, going back to what you were quoting, Scotty, what if they got the knowledge fruit? That's bad. They get the life thing. Okay, now we have competition is what that sounds like, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if God is this all-knowing, all-seeing, all-loving, and love, by the way, is another word that's just been completely bastardized. It doesn't mean anything of what it probably actually is, but how many different definitions of love do we have? These new age folks that go on about, well, love is all there really is, and it's all about love. It's like, oh God, are you brainwashed? There is nothing and I'm going to go on the record saying this, and I'll probably get smacked down for it, but there is nothing in any of the mythos, any of the cosmologies, nothing that describes this concept that we call love. Nothing. There is
It's an external.
There are relationships, there are interactions, but this whole concept of it's just all love is nowhere to be found.
And by the way, you never see that in Genesis,
right?
In Judeo-Christianity, there's never love mentioned in creation. And there's an interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, and just a very objective, cursory look at the Old Testament is whoever that God was that created us was one psychopathic son of a bitch. I mean, he had emotional problems. He had interaction problems, all the stuff that we would classify in the classic the psychology.
You know why? Today. I believe it's because he is mostly a construct.
That's exactly right. That's
We made God in our own image, not the other way around. God, I believe, exists. The originator exists. The creator exists. I don't believe that has anything to do with the God we created in our religion. Because the God that we created is a vengeful God. He's a God whose mind could be changed by even though his word was his word, and what he said, what goes out, issues from his mouth is the word of God, yet his mind could be changed. Moses changed his mind at one point. He repented of the evil he was going to do.
Are you saying it's an anthropomorphization of energy?
That what?
God?
Yeah.
Yes.
In a way, yes.
Yeah, I would say that. In fact, anytime somebody says God made man, I said, no, that's completely ass backwards. Man made God. In the definition that we use, or that everybody's got, in their psyche, that construct of the definition of what we call God is all man-made. Now, there were, and again, going back to the ancient cosmologies and writings, there are a lot of instances where it's like we were talking earlier about Pharaoh is not what they called the kings. Pharaohs were administrators. Egypt actually had kings. They didn't have pharaohs running the place. Well, the pharaohs were the underlings. But it's an example of how language and words get completely used and abused and tossed into the narrative to confuse people. And that goes back to my point about language is the operating system of your mind.
Yeah.
And if you understand the how important that concept is, then you'll start examining the words that you use to describe yourself, your internal dialogue, your external dialogue, the reality around you, because you start dissecting and looking at the etymology of a lot of these words. It's like I was talking about with love. Love it's so overused, abused, and just manipulated big time that when you tell somebody you love them, what are you actually saying? Mm-hmm. And if people stopped and thought about it, what am I using that word to express from my feelings? Because feelings are what we derive. We attach words and definitions and all this to the feelings that we experience. And if we let other people define those for us, we're screwed. I think that's one of the reasons we see a lot of the chaos in the world today is people have taken words and they've ascribed them to feelings, and they've told people that these feelings they're having are defined by these words, and therefore, ergo, you go forth. And it's caused what's happened, I think, one of the underlying problems in society in the global sense is that people have been given words to describe feelings, and the definitions of those words don't match the feelings. So there's a great deal of confusion and just complete chaos that goes on within the individual because
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, exactly. And so because what they're feeling, they've been given a word to describe that, and the description of that word doesn't match, but they're saying, well, that's what everybody else is calling it, so I'm going to go with that. And that's where the real exposure of reality and truth in the human experience is going to go through a renaissance. I think we're in a 21st century renaissance that is based on knowledge and information that is being cleaned up and clarified after being curated and craftily put together by people who really didn't have our well-being in mind when they did it. And they're blatantly doing it now. I mean, when they came up with this woke crap a couple of years ago, I'm like, oh God, where are you guys going with this?
Yeah.
And people have
controlling the verbiage and nouns of the narrative is where they're getting the control of the people.
Agreed.
And thank you, Terry Pitts. Appreciate that.
So I have a question, which is, considering if that is does that mean, and we live in a sea of energy, so does that mean our reality, God, or whatever you want to call it, what our existence, is it just a cyclical form of resonance?
Oh boy, did you open a can of worms there.
Hello.
Yes, because so going back to the construct that consciousness is the creator, whatever that is, we all experience it, yet nobody can define it. It's just we all have this shared experience of consciousness. The habit and nature of consciousness is creation. It's constantly in motion. The tool or the aspect of that creation and motion is energy. Energy is made up of frequencies. So all these frequencies materialize everything that we experience and that we feel. So if we are frequency stamps, individual unique frequency stamps of consciousness, which is why we have consciousness, which is why we experience everything, then our own individuality is what we are here to experience. It's not somebody else's. It's not a group. It's not a philosophy or a theology or a science or anything. It is our own individual experience that we're here to experience. And the more open we are to the realization of that simpleness, then we start to see all the different things that people experience themselves and how we interact with each other. Now, those frequencies are cyclical. Everything is a wave. You go to the quantum mechanics and physics and theories, they finally come to the point where they say, well, nothing is solid. Everything is a wave. What is a wave? A wave is a motion of up and down, or it's actually conical or toroidal. And if everything is a frequency, nothing is solid, then those frequencies have cycles. And there are cycles within cycles within cycles. And all of it can either be harmonious or discordant. And when you find something that you feel good about, you resonate with it. When you find or encounter something that you don't feel good about, that's discord or disharmony. And you can feel that. So the awareness of the individual experience of frequencies in cycles is the most important thing that we can all, in my opinion, that we can all come to the realization of and be able to more successfully, productively, and positively navigate the reality that we inhabit. And it's so, there's a lot of these, they got 12-step programs. You've got Neville Goddard. You've got all these different people who have come up with ways to think, ways to experience yourself, to go within, to find that one. And this is one of the things that I was a part of in the 90s, in particular when the New Age movement started, really getting its fur ruffled. And everybody was saying, well, you got to find the one. You got to go see the one, seek the one, get your guru. You've got to go find that connection with the one.
Find a pure crystal.
And when in reality, the one is who you are, the one, because you are a part of consciousness. So there's never a need to go seek without, it's to seek within. And the other thing that really really took me and made me go through a number of iterations of what is going on here until I finally realized this, is that the other concept of you got to be in the now. You got to be present. The present, you got to be in the now. Eckhart Tolle goes through this. What I found is that there is never any now. It's always next. You are always
in the next.
We are always in a constant movement forward, because going back to consciousness, and it's constantly in motion, that's what we are experiencing. There's never any now. There's always the next. Our minds, and the way that works is we're always thinking about and predicting the future in some way for ourselves. So that in itself is, going back to your point, Sarah, is another cycle. We are in a constant cycle of motion and creation. We are individually experiencing this set of frequencies through our individual frequency stamp that makes us the unique individuals that we are, as we move through reality of consciousness. Everything else is somebody's interpretation that they've put together and packed it up and sold it to you. So it's up to the individuals to understand and realize that your experience is totally subjective, just like everybody else's. There is nothing that is real other than that which you experience and resonate with yourself. And you're going to continue to go through cycles as you explore it and experience it, and it reveals itself to you as you reveal yourself to it. So it's all of this magic mumbo jumbo of stuff is just everybody else's speculation. Individuals have put together a construct and sold it to you as, here's reality, here's where you fit, and this is how you navigate it. Okay.
Professor, I know this is going to be a tough call, tough order for you, but carry on for a few minutes while I step away for something. I'll be right back.
Enjoy the time. Enjoy the time, Scotty.
No dead air time.
Well, so all of this is just where I have come to after exploring and experiencing and trying to figure out, of all of the different systems and ways in which are available to define the experience that I'm having, what of them makes any sense at all? You can only go so far in some of them. I think another thing that's going to be extremely powerful in the future is the advent of psychedelics, particularly with mushrooms.
That explains a lot.
I think that there is some kind of biochemical, bioelectrical component in the substances of ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin, mescaline, that seem to be able to liberate the mind from the physicality, because this is another part of the construct for me. Our brains are not our minds. Our minds are our frequency stamps. The brain is only an electrical transceiver where chemical and electrical interactions happen, because the mind interacts through the physicality through the brain. But the mind and the brain are two separate things. When our mind or our brain stops functioning, or it's cut off from what it needs to physically exist, the mind keeps going. And this seems to be expressed and experienced most specifically through this category of psychedelics. There seems to be these other realms where things like astral projections and other dimensions seem to be much more easily accessed by the mind and through the mind when these substances are introduced. What we've seen with psilocybin in particular with post-traumatic stress disorder and other psychological disorders is extremely profound. And it's been because the officialdom has packaged and labeled things like cannabis and THC and these other substances as not good for you. Well, anytime, this is a good rule of thumb, anytime somebody in authority tells you something's not good for you, you should probably, or if something is good for you, you should probably do some serious research to how they came up with that. Because most
Scotty,
likely,
you missed the mushrooms.
Oh, damn it.
Well, then,
So,
say if
does that make
all
sense, Sarah?
this is true, if
Yeah.
it is true, why isn't it easier, or how would a person align themselves with the resonance of, let's say, joy or ecstasy?
Well, you got to start with the definitions of those, and make sure that you're using a term that's appropriate for the experience you're having. So, for example, there's lots of experiences with people that, go through their first ayahuasca experience, and it's not fun at all. They see all kinds of crazy, nasty creatures. They have encounters with things that animals and spirits and things that just freak them out. Others have the exact opposite. So you have to look at it and say, well, what's the experience, and what are the best words that you've got or terms to describe that experience? So ecstasy, I don't know, I would describe ecstasy as being in a state of, and again, just using the words that I have, a state of overabundant bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And bliss being something of just a sense of there's nothing that feels better than this. And ecstasy being, maybe bliss on steroids. Joy, I don't know. Joy is, I would use that to describe the feeling I have when I see my new granddaughter. And I see her face and those great big blue eyes, and I go, that just makes me feel like what I would call joy, happiness, warmth. But again, it goes back to the point I was making that language is the operating system of your mind. And once you realize that, you start looking at the words that you use to describe your experience. And that's when you start finding questions about words that you have been using. My example earlier of love, for example, I think love is one of the ones that has been so manipulated, and people have no idea what it really means. And if you ask somebody to describe what they feel when they use the word love, I bet you get all kinds of different definitions of those feelings.
Got all kinds of different people.
Yeah.
I also find it, this is probably not the track you're on, but something comes to mind how this evolution of how we have believed in what God is, who he is, down through the millennia.
Mm-hmm.
It started, and these are not solid dates. I'm using this as an example. There are eras of humanity where, let's call it 10,000 to 8,000 BCE. God was the God of the unknown, the skies, the mountains, the whatever. And then
The ocean.
as we grew to develop our religions, so we built our religions based on the God is something up there that we cannot achieve, that we cannot see, but he's there. And then we evolved, that came down a little bit. God became the God of the thunder. Oh, he's in the thunder, or he's in the mountain, or he's in the waters. Then it became the God was the God who, down a few more millennia, and you're talking about the God who we started reflecting this in the way kings would worship. He is the God that rules us. He's the God that, like the king now, he rules who we are. He is omnipotent. His word is so on. And it came all the way down to the way I saw this progression was finally God became a God then that could relate to us. He was a God that was no longer just the God of the great cosmos or the God of the sky or the thunder or the mountain or the absolute despot or the and think of Old Testament when you think of that. He started to become the God who could relate to us and that we could relate to. And then finally, in Christianity, he became the God who is the God of love, the God of open arms, the God of come to me, I'm the daddy God. And I may not have explained that as well as I could have. There's a progression to that, though, and it's interesting.
Well, to me, if all you have to do is look at Hinduism, they've got a god for everything. There's a god for doing the well. I'm making it a parody, but there's a god for doing the dishes. Okay,
right.
There are, and
he doesn't dwell here. By the way,
he's not at my house.
Yeah.
At first, I thought he said there was a God for doing it.
Yeah, I wish.
Well, they have that too. But the idea, we have anthropomorphized the nature and the unseen and unknown. So everything that we, it started with best information, or what it seems is a directionality, a trend, is that there is a reverence for nature, for the manifestation of reality in our environment. So you reverence trees, water, grass, animals, insects, the heavens. And in order to put some kind of definition around those expressions and those ideas, we anthropomorphized it. We said, well, that's got to be a god of this and a god of that. And those gods seem to be, and particularly in the Western religions, they have this masculine definition. It's like, well, okay, but what about this feminine side? I keep being told I need to be in touch with my feminine side. And I'm like, I'm trying to find that. Where is it? How do I touch it? And what do I do when I get there? So again, it goes back to the language. It goes back to the words and the definitions, and trying to figure out ways to define our experience in reality, particularly as it relates to nature, for the seen, and then for the unseen. Boy, is that easy to create some definition for, because what are you going to do? You're going to challenge me on my definition of the unseen? Right. Go ahead. Tell me what you call it, right? Because it's incorporeal. It's intangible. It's not something that can be put on a table and everybody can look at it and see it the same way. And even in that, where you do have something you can put on the table, everybody's perspective is unique. It's like Leibniz, who was he was a German, Jewish, German, Norwegian mathematician and philosopher, and he's the one that came up with the calculus that we use today, tensor calculus in particular, for shooting stuff up into space. And his definition was that we are all monads, and the monad is an individual expression of consciousness that has its unique perspective, because you can't have two monads in the same place at the same time. So every monad sees reality from its own perspective, its own individual sight, and from its seat that it is. And I think that makes a hell of a lot of sense, because we cannot sit at a table with a object on the table, sit around that table, and all see the same thing. We will see aspects of that same thing, but our perspective and our observation is all unique.
Well, the interesting thing is that our perceptions of that thing does not change the nature of the thing.
No.
It's only our perception of it.
Right.
I used to say,
I listened to an astrophysicist talking about dark matter and dark energy one day. And his attempt to describe it actually sounded very biblical. He was talking about the history of the universe was written in the this and the and it was like he was talking about the word and the spirit, and I'm going like, he just can't say that because he's a scientist, you know.
Well, the problem with dark energy and dark matter is that they were created because the observations didn't meet the mathematical models.
Yeah.
So
failure to observe.
Well, and that's the thing, is that when you take math models, machines, and men, and you put all that together to go find what you're looking for, you will find what you're looking for. It may not be what you expect.
Yeah.
But, you know, the whole idea, the second law of thermodynamics about, you know, the energy cannot be created or destroyed, and that there is entropy, right? The second law of thermodynamics says that things will eventually cool. We don't have an expanding universe. It will eventually, in gazillions of years from now, end up being a cold 0 Kelvin space. The problem is they don't find that anywhere.
Yeah.
All they find is expansion. So when they started looking for what they thought was going to be a contracting universe, and this is all in the physics stuff, and this is one of the reasons these guys are endless debates amongst themselves about, you know, what's reality and what isn't, is that when they do these observations with these new toys and tools and the telemetry that they get, like the James Webb Space Telescope, looking in the infrared band of frequencies,
yep.
They find information that completely trashes the math models, machines, and the men who went through and said, well, this is what we're going to find. Mm-hmm. Well, when they realized that there was something going on in this gravitation thing, and I'm just going to state it right here. Gravity, it's not gravity. The definition of gravity is wrong. It's magnetism. There is no speed of gravity. I've even seen some physicists go, well, the speed of gravity is light. It's like, what? How in the hell does that make any sense?
Gravity sucks.
Right? Gravity sucks. But the whole physics model that we have is based on looking at the wrong things for the wrong reasons. So when they started to see that their observations about the cosmos and galaxies and stars and all of that was not adhering to the models that they'd come up with from the math and the machines, they looked at it and said, well, there must be this other thing out there called dark matter and dark energy. And we don't know what it is. We can't see it. All we know is that the observations are showing us stuff that doesn't make any sense. So we're going to create these two things. Well, how much of that do you need? Well, you can titrate just enough to match the observation and put that into the models and the math, and then you get the answer. None of that shit exists.
Right.
It's completely, it doesn't make any sense. So
thank you, Jeremy.
Bingo.
That's exactly right, Jeremy.
Scientists today make shit up to fill in the gaps.
They can't. The idea that we, in our finite understanding of reality, can come up with what is on the other side of the reality that we experience is just another arrogant, ignorant expression of man flailing around, trying to control himself and his fellow man and the environment that we're in. And that is another part of what I think is happening in this 21st century Renaissance. I think we're going to be liberated from the shackles of science and just the silliness that has been going on for so long because we've allowed it. And
they took the place of the church.
Well, that's what happened with Descartes when they did the split, right? Descartes back in the Enlightenment when he said, "Okay, man, because we know math, we know the mind of God because everything appears to be mathematical. There's math everywhere. There's geometry everywhere. Well, that must be the mind of God because everything that we look at we can figure it out with math." So Descartes said, man gets nature, and the church gets angels, spirits, and the mind, because consciousnesses can't be explained to this day. And so that was a split when you had the materialistic view of science that we have today. And then they added the mechanistic component a few hundred years later. So you have this materialist mechanistic view of science, which is what everybody is under the guidance of for whatever the hell it is we do, for everything from climate change to viruses and everything in between.
As we begin to wrap up,
You can try.
I want to read a quote from this great little book I have sitting on my shelf.
Is that on page 284?
And not onto it. That's the other book.
Okay.
I've got this quote here by Henry. I've never been able to pronounce his name right. Poincaré, Poincare, with the accent over it. In his 1905 book, Science and Hypothesis, he said, "Science is built up of facts as a house is built of stones. But an accumulation of facts is no more a science than a heap of stones is a house. So I have this pile of stones, each one representing a scientific fact that could be used to build a solid foundation for what I'll call the house of the origins of humanity. Yet they remain an unconstructed heap, because although each stone may be individually factual, they can be loosely mortared together only by hypothesis built on the presupposition that humans evolved from lesser forms of primates, who in turn evolved from emergent aquatic species, who themselves evolved from primordial slime. Though these individual facts may indeed comprise my pile of stones, they cannot construct an unshakable foundation, for they lack concrete coherence. So the house remains in the architectural phase. We know where we want to put all the stones. We're just not yet sure how they all fit together. And science as we know it is defined as a branch of knowledge," and on I go. There's more points I made here.
Now we know why Scotsmen make good engineers.
There you go. That's right.
Fitting all the stones together.
That's it. Putting all the stones together. And I think what this is, and this doesn't this sound like I'm wrapping things up? A conversation like this is a lot of stones that we put out there that we're trying to look for ways to mortar them all together.
It's nothing but taking nuggets in your noggin and knocking them around.
That's it. That's it, brother. Thank you, Jeremy Henson. Thank you to everybody who's been here tonight. It is now midnight.
I've lost track of so many threads in this conversation that
it's all one
you
big
and me
thread.
both.
Yeah.
So, Professor, you don't know how much.
Sarah, nice to have you around.
And love having you
too,
here.
Uncle John.
And Sarah, good having you here tonight.
I came in for stone circles.
That's right. And you ended up with stones with no mortar.
Three blind mice.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, on that, I have often said, just on that point alone, taking this as a word picture, the process of evolution. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. But all the different levels that we have, remember we had Australopithecus, we have Cro-Magnon, we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Neanderthal and everything. And we say, this is the progression, but we're missing the missing link, was the thing we heard of. And then they found the little primate fossil from Africa somewhere about 10 years ago or so and said, we found the missing link. And I said, but that does not, what you've got are several stages that you see that we're calling stages. What if they're not stages at all? What if they're all individual species that are not connected? We have no way of knowing whether or not they are connected. Do we have DNA that connects them? No. So this is the backside of what we're talking about, is that even science itself, while we're talking a lot about faith and religion and spirituality, the way we see God, the way we see creation and all that, yet all of this all fits into it as well. Science, the science of creation, the science of origins. It's as much guesswork as anything else. We think we're solid, but we don't know that we're solid. It's like that, as you were talking, Professor, I've got this little piece of paper here sitting on my desk. It's a memo pad. It's pink. All right. See, it's pink. And somebody who's colorblind might come along and say, well, it's kind of mint green, isn't it? Or that's blue, or that's whatever. I used to use the illustration of an ashtray because I was sitting in a bar once when we could smoke in bars. We were all drinking pints. I said, look at this ashtray. I said, that's a white ashtray. I said, but if you perceive it as a different color, that's going to be a blue ashtray to you, or a red ashtray to you, or a green ashtray to you. I said, but does that change? Does your perception change the innate color of the ashtray? No. So that begs the question, is there an absolute in there anywhere?
Well, the only thing that wouldn't change is the fact that you're looking at an ashtray.
Right. It's still an ashtray. Yeah.
It may be a different color. All you got to do is turn a different colored light on.
Yep.
And now it's a
But
green
there's
ashtray.
a lot of people who would not recognize it as an ashtray.
Especially
today.
if they've never seen one before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I find the exploration of the experience of mind, everything that we've been talking about here tonight, the most fascinating and most important pursuit that we can all have individually as well as collectively. And that's where a lot of the stuff that I talked about tonight has come to, because it's all real confusing. I mean, you look at science, philosophies, theologies, and oh my God, there's nothing more than, a gazillion different iterations and versions.
In Shakespeare's time, they were all referred to as philosophies.
Right. Science was in the philosophical category.
Jeremy Hansen says, I'd like Scotty to do a show on the origin of superstitions. And I would like to say, Jeremy, didn't we just do that? No, I think it's all linked. I'm being flippant. I think that's a great idea if we can look into that.
Well, we have Halloween coming up.
What's that, Sarah?
We have Halloween coming up.
That's right. We got Halloween coming up. We can maybe do it for that. Coming up toward it anyway. So
there's a lot of superstitions about the interaction of men and women.
Yes. Yeah, we do that too. I got those. All right. So, oops. What did I do? I accidentally hit that. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Everybody, thanks for being here. Uncle John, thanks for being here, brother. We will see you soon. Boom. I thought he was going to say something. Like, see ya, Scotty. Good night. And Sarah, good to see you.
All right. Thanks.
And,
guys.
Sarah, it's great to talk again. We need to do this more often.
Yeah.
more often.
You know where I'm at. So
There you are. All right. And Professor Bauer, thank you for a good evening. It's a lot of
Thank
fun.
you
Let's
for,
do this again soon.
Thanks for letting me in and flapping my yap. It's
Hell yeah.
it's always fun.
All right. Have a good night.
You too, brother.
All right. Everybody else, thank you for being here. Thanks for sitting here for 2 extra hours tonight. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And I hope you did too. I will be back on Sunday morning with It's Sunday, our informal morning coffee on Sunday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. So watch for the announcement on that and the link. Everybody, thanks for being here. Live long and prosper.